and I will note for the record that Senator Lindsay Port, for reasons that comply with Senate rules, will be participating and voting from Burnsville, Minnesota today, and she is on the Zoom link. If you want to load up the Zoom link, it's up to you, and say hi to Lindsay, or she'll be on the screen, on the big screen as well. Members, today we have just one item on the agenda. That's Senate File 27. Chief Author Senator Zainab Mohammed. We received public testimony on this matter a week ago, and so public testimony is now closed, and today.
Buenos días, estamos aquí desde Unidos, Minnesota, transmitiendo desde en vivo. El día de hoy no habrá interpretación, pero básicamente esto es el Comité de Transporte que estuvo el miércoles pasado hasta la continuación. El día de hoy no habrá testimonio, simplemente se seguirá con el proceso del comité para que pase en el Senado. Muchas gracias.
How does that sound? All right. Great. Thank you. And welcome to everyone who is attending again this week. Big crowd again. Senator Champion, welcome. And with that, I will give the floor to Senator Mohammed. Welcome to the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We spoke about this in the previous committee meeting, but I just want to take a quick moment. Quick review of the bill and what it does, and there are three parts to that. Number one, it restores the ability of all Minnesotans, regardless of citizenship or immigration status, to obtain a Class D driver's license as long as they pass the written and driving tests, prove a Minnesota residency, and obtain insurance. Second, it assures that certain data to obtain a Class D driver's license is private so that all Minnesotans can be rest assured that their data is protected. And third, ensures that the executive branch can never unilaterally and undemocratically take away driver's licenses from our immigrant and refugee neighbors. And before I wrap up, we'll have more thorough hearing of the bill. But before I wrap up, I want to take a moment to recognize the broad coalition of organizations and stakeholders who submitted letters to support in support of this bill, including COPAL, Unidos, MIRAC, Minnesota Immigrant Movement, Black Immigrant Collective, the Minnesota Chamber of Commerce, the Minnesota Milk Producers Association, the Minnesota Peace and Police Officers Association, the Minnesota AFL-CIO, North Central States Regional and Council of Carpenters Services Employees International Union, Minnesota Nurses Association, LIUNA, numerous mayors, police chiefs, and county sheriffs from across the state. Thank you for considering this legislation, and I look forward to answering your questions this evening.
Thank you, Senator Mohammed. Members, I'll just call your attention to your packet. I believe all the letters that were submitted last week are included again in your packet, and there are a few additional letters. I think I'd mentioned LIUNA was a late breaker, so that was included. Hennepin County Attorney's Office, Hennepin County Board of Commissioners, Regional Council of Carpenters, and others. There's also, I should mention, a letter of opposition from FAIR. I wanted to draw your attention to that, and I'll let you peruse the letters. There's a number of others as well. Thank you, Senator Mohammed. Who next?
Vina, who will go through a thorough explanation of the bill.
May I interrupt just to give the courtesy to your co-author, Senator Champion. Did you want to address the committee at this time?
Yes.
Mr. Chair and committee, thank you so much for hearing this important piece of policy, and thank you to Senator Mohammed, who came in enthusiastic, wanted to carry this bill. And we've been working together, and I'm just proud of the work that she's doing. And I hope to be proud of the work of this committee once we move it on, because we believe that it's important. Not to mention, historically, this was something that was done before, right? You know, when you think in terms of what this bill is asking for, and it has a broad coalition of support, even law enforcement. I saw on television the other day, lots of coverage with law enforcement saying this is the right thing to do. So we hope that you will agree. And thank you, Mr. Chair, for your vision and always being a committed one to this important work. So thank you again, and thank you for having me. And thank you to the broad coalition.
Thank you. Ms. Zier, welcome to the committee.
Thank you, Chair Dibble, Lead Jasinski, President Champion, and Senator Mohammed. Thank you for having me here again today. My name is Vina Iyer. I am the Executive Director of the Immigrant Law Center of Minnesota, and Senator Mohammed has asked me to go through the walkthrough of the bill. I'll go through it in order, highlighting the most important provisions of the bill. Starting with Article 1, page 3, lines 3.8 through 3.14. That's modifying Section 171.06 of Minnesota law, and that's the most significant provision of the bill. It restores the policy in place until 2003 of allowing all Minnesotans to obtain a driver's license without providing proof of citizenship or immigration status. From later on that same page through page 6, an additional couple of subdivisions are added to Section 171.06 that enumerate documents that can be shown as primary and secondary documents for the purpose of obtaining a driver's license. These specifically identify it's a non-exhaustive list of documents that may be provided by individuals who might not have a U.S. birth certificate, U.S. passport, or green card. Additionally, these provisions establish the requirements for verifying the authenticity of these documents, as is already required for other types of documents that are used as primary and secondary documents. Then turning to page 7 of the bill, section 7. Those provisions codified that a non-compliant license cannot have a marker which indicates whether the license holder is lawfully present. Moving on to Article 2, specifically pages 9 and 10, there are a number of data privacy protections that prevent the sharing of information with other local, state, and federal government agencies that would reveal an individual's immigration status. These provisions will be the subject of discussion in the Senate Judiciary Committee. Next, the 1R, or the repeal provision, eliminates those provisions that had previously prevented the executive branch from changing the administrative rules about what primary and secondary documents are acceptable for obtaining a non-compliant driver's license. And finally, the author's amendment just further clarifies those data privacy protections and also outlines appropriations for the bill based on the fiscal note. And again, those data privacy protections will be the subject of discussion in the Judiciary Committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Iyer. Committee, questions or amendments?
Mr. Chair.
Senator Jasinski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. What's the path of this bill after it leaves here?
Mr. Chair, it'll be referred to the Judiciary Committee.
Judiciary. And then after that?
You're not Mr. Chair. So used to saying that. Senator Jasinski, Judiciary.
Judiciary and no other stop. So just Judiciary is the only other plan for this to go?
Senator Jasinski, as far as I know, yes.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Oh, I'm sorry, Finance, of course, yes.
Thanks. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, Senator Coleman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If I may, just for a brief second,
Absolutely.
I just wanted to thank Senator Mohammed for her passion for this issue, Senator Champion, you as well, and for everyone who came forward to share their stories and their testimony last week. I truly put myself in the shoes of everyone who came forward, and one testimony in particular stood out for me when a mother had to take her child to urgent care and wasn't able to. And so I just want to preface that the discussion this evening, the amendments this evening, they are not against the concept and the idea of this bill, which I support wholeheartedly. We are looking to make technical or minor structural fixes so that this may be a bipartisan effort. And I just want to thank you again for the consideration and for sharing your stories in a very vulnerable fashion. Thank you.
Senator Howe.
Chair Dibble, are we going to have discussion and then amendments, or how would you like to proceed with that?
So we are now having discussion or amendments, whatever the committee chooses to do.
Well,
This is our moment.
in that light, I know that I'm going to offer the A19, which was a DVS suggestion to change the date on page 9, line 19. So it's the A19 amendment, and change the date from October 1, 2023, and insert January 1, 2024. And I think we made that available to you and your staff. So I would make that amendment at this time. Hopefully it's one that DVS suggested, so it would be taken as a friendly amendment.
Thank you. So Senator Howe offers the A19 amendment. I believe this amendment is in your packet, members. Are there? And just for those in the audience, there are a few copies of the amendments at the back of the room if you wanted to go back as these amendments are offered and grab them for your perusal. You're welcome to do that. Yeah, and it changes the effective date of the bill from October 1st, 2023 to January 1st of 2024. And I will give the bill's author an opportunity to respond to the suggestion.
Mr. Chair, I wanted to bring up DVS to ask why they needed that time extension.
Thank you. Mr. Peng Zhang is available for questions. Welcome to the committee. Please identify yourself for the record and respond to Senator Mohammed's question.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Peng Zhang, Director of the Driver and Vehicle Services Division. To the question, we proposed the January effective date to allow DVS the time to properly prepare and staff up and train the resources necessary, which includes our deputy registrar partners who administer a large portion of this work. With that being said, one of the things that we will note that this bill is moving at a very high pace, and we think that if it continues at this pace, that the October 1 date may be reasonable. It was brought up as a concern that if the bill didn't pass or passed later in the session, that we would just need a little bit more time. Thank you.
So please stay at the table. There may be follow-up questions. Thank you. Which I have. So if I heard you correctly, if the bill passes sooner rather than later in this session, the October 1st date is reasonable. If it passes towards the end of this legislative session, January 1st is more desirable.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. Senator Howe.
Thank you, Chair Dibble. And I guess what I would ask, if you could stay, my concern is,
Director Zhang, it's just a good idea to stay until this conversation is
it's a multi-month difference, and I think we need to, identify that, because if you look at this is a quarter basically, and I just would hate to see us to have that October date and you not be prepared to implement. And I think it would be much better to have a later date, just so you were prepared and it comes off seamlessly, rather than have issues right off the get-go, much like we experienced with other programs that we tried to implement.
All right, thank you. Senator Mohammed.
Mr. Chair, Senator Howe, what we're doing with this bill is that we're reinstating the previous law that we had prior to 2003, and DVS already knows how to do this work, so they wouldn't be doing a lot of things differently. I appreciate the director for coming and kind of telling us that if this moves as fast as it is moving, then they'll have the time. And I request a no on this amendment, no vote on this amendment.
Senator Jasinski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Director Jung. So a question, we've worked a lot of years on deputy registers, MNLARs, MnDrive. A lot of the work has been pushed off to our deputy registers with the front work. And with all the requirements and looking at the documentation, do you really feel that our deputy registers and DVS are trained to go through all the different documents that would be involved in this process from different countries, different areas? There is just a lot of paperwork, and our deputy registers have had the brunt of all the work put on them. They're getting the same fee. The time they're spending to do this is costing them money as private businesses, and now we're going to put more on them to do research on which document in, let's say, for example, Kenya is legitimate versus a document from Germany or whatever it may be, whatever country it may be. It seems like there's an awful lot of pressure being put on our staff to verify all these different documents. Can you touch on that, please?
Deputy Commissioner.
Chair Devil, Senator Jasinski. Yes, there's a significant number of increased documents that will be as a part of this process. We're confident that with the time and the resources that this bill currently provides, we have 2 resources that we've assigned to become experts in this space so that they can train and support our deputy registrar partners as well as our offices. Our staff and our deputy registrar partners are experienced in verifying documents, and while some of these will be new, not every document will be new. DVS is confident that we'll be with the time, we'll be able to get folks trained up and prepared for this.
And then just one follow-up. Are you proposing a fee increase then for our deputy registrar to do all this extra work, or is this just something they're going to absorb again?
Deputy Commissioner.
Chair Devil, Senator Jasinski, there is no proposal in this bill for a fee increase. It would be as it currently stands right now.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Senator Lang.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just one more question for the director. I'm making sure that I'm hearing you right. You're saying that DVS as a whole is prepared to distinguish between what is real and what is fake in any country throughout the world when this bill passes.
Deputy.
I want to be clear.
Chair Devil, Senator Lang, we will be working to prepare ourselves for that process and be prepared to verify documents as they come in. We will work closely with our federal and international partners to gain that experience and the expertise necessary. That is why this time to prepare is so critical.
Senator Lang.
How? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Deputy Commissioner.
How are you going to do that?
Chair
Especially if you're not going to need the extra time.
Chair Devil, Senator Lang, thank you. So this time, once the bill passes and we can start this work, is that time where we can start exploring the different documents that we anticipate seeing that we weren't seeing before or weren't a part of our current process. There are a long list of foreign documents that we will have to become familiar with. And we will have to work with our federal business partners as well as international partners to learn more about that documentation and to develop the processes necessary to do that work.
Senator Lang. So that's the how. Is there a plan in place to do that? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Deputy Commissioner.
Yeah, Senator Lang, thank you. The plan is to coordinate with our federal partners and with international agencies as those documents come across our desk to learn more about what valid documentation looks like and what we should be looking for. There are several types of security features that are involved with international documents, and those are the features that we'll have to familiarize ourselves with and our business partners with.
Senator Howe.
Thank you, Chair Dibble. My question, I guess, goes to the comment from the author. When you say that they've done this since 2003, Deputy Commissioner, what kind of staff turnover have you had in the last 20 years that have done that in the past since before 2003. Do you have is that staff still the same staff, or have you had quite a turnover in the last 20 years?
Deputy Commissioner.
Chair Devil, Senator Howe, thank you. Like many other agencies, we've had a significant turnover over the last 20 years. One of the things that have remained consistent, though, is that we've documented our processes, and we've continued to train and administer the law as closely as possible. I think that again, there will be some things that we will have to learn and relearn in this space. But with appropriate time, we feel we would be prepared.
Senator Howe.
Well, flashback to Minlars, that's all I'll say, and I'll stop, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Anything further, members? All right. All those in favor of Amendment A19? Oh, I'm sorry. Senator Champion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As we know, is that we have a robust and very capable staff. We know that there's been some other challenges before, but those challenges have, like Minlars, I heard you say that. There's been lots of learning as far as that's concerned. What we are proposing is perhaps this particular request may be premature, because I think as it goes through the process, based on what I heard the agency say, is that based on when it passes, that will drive if they will need more time. And I think at that time, it would be most appropriate then to have a robust and clear conversation as to what should happen. And so perhaps, even though there are good intentions with this amendment, that perhaps we choose not to adopt it today and be prepared to make a change later if there is a need for a change.
All right, members, hearing no further discussion, Senator Howe.
It seems surprising, Deputy Commissioner, because this amendment came directly from your staff. So it is amazing that it comes from your staff at one point and now you're testifying against it. But it's kind of surprising. It catches me by surprise that that would occur.
All right, thank you. All right, I will call the vote. All those in favor of the A19 amendment, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. No. The amendment does not prevail, does not pass. I hate saying prevail because it sounds like another word, so does not pass. All right, members, discussion, questions, or amendment?
Mr. Chair,
Senator Coleman.
if I may, I'd like to offer the A14 amendment.
Senator Coleman offers the A14 amendment. Members, that's in your packet. Senator Coleman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, the A14 amendment addresses the number of full-time employees needed. The fiscal note mentions that the number needed or the number of applicants for these driver's license will decrease by 50% after the first year. And so this amendment just reflects that in the monetary value, decreasing the number of FTEs and the funding to reflect that.
Thank you. Senator Champion or Mohammed? Senator Mohammed. Senator Champion.
Mr. Chair, thank you so much. After having some conversation about it, we recognize why the senator put forth this amendment. But what we want the committee to understand is that in the beginning, it's going to need a little more money, which is why there's the ask for the $1.4 million. But after that, there won't be, is my understanding, as much of a need from the state, but it will be self-sustaining is my understanding. And I will leave any word to my folks to correct me if I'm wrong.
So I'll go to Senator Mohammed then, but then I would have a question for Deputy Director Zhang. If Deputy Director, if you could make your way to the table, because I do want to understand the fiscal note, because I understand the fiscal note as we see it here is not accurate, hence the amendment. So this, members, this amends the amendment that Senator Mohammed had offered at the outset, and that was responding to some additional information that had come in after the fiscal note had been developed. And so I'm completely confused. So Senator Mohammed, first I'll give you the opportunity to respond if you so desire, and then I will turn my question to
Yeah, I
Deputy
think,
Commissioner Zhang.
Mr. Chair, this is my first bill presentation.
Doing great. And you got a great
know, I
partner
got-
here to
I
help
have
you out
Senator
here, so
Champion.
you're a very smart first bill presenter.
Mr. Chair, I think that when we were talking to DVS and other folks about the fiscal note of the bill, they had essentially told us what they needed in order to run this program. And so I'll let Director Zhang answer some of those questions.
So Director Zhang, we don't necessarily need to go into the details of the fiscal notes. Maybe just help us understand how much this is going to cost at the outset, how much is this going to cost on an ongoing basis, and how that relates to the amendment that was offered and how that relates to the amendment that is being offered. I'll note, members, that it does cut the startup costs in the second year by half, but then eliminates the base increase as well. So that's what the amendment that's in front of us does. Deputy Commissioner Zhang.
Chair Dibble, thank you. The fiscal note as proposed really reflects what we anticipate seeing from Minnesota customers with this proposal. Like Real ID, we saw a lot of customers come up front right as the process was available, and over the next several years, that kind of peak interaction be sustained, and then years following, we see kind of a more consistent flow of what we would consider our normal traffic in the years going forward. So as proposed, we have in the first biennium kind of the larger staffing size that in anticipation of more volume coming through, and in anticipation of getting prepared and training. And then in the fiscal years or the biennium following, we go down to a smaller kind of skeleton crew, if you could say, that will just support the process. There are still resources in the out years, but they are smaller. And part of our assumption is that the volume and the demand will be lower in the out years and consistent.
So, yes. Senator Coleman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I believe that this amendment reflects what you're saying. So the fiscal note says, assume of the 77,000 eligible individuals, approximately 20% would apply for a non-compliant credential in the first year it becomes available, and then 10% in the years after. And so what the amendment does is amends it from 1,413,000, cuts it in half, as the fiscal note states, to 707,000. So it does still leave money as well available for years following.
Senator Champion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just to make sure that we're clear, my discussions with the agency seems to suggest that the fiscal request is what we like to keep it at this particular point because of the need, and we want to make sure that it's resourced in order to do this important work. And so that is what we are asked. So we're asking the committee not to adopt the A14 amendment.
And I just have one final clarifying question about the agency's request. The ongoing base adjustment of, I think, 800 and some thousand per year is needed, correct? I think there's a permanent increase to the base from the special revenue fund for the purpose of supporting the additional work. Is that needed, or is this program and activity self-supporting? Or I should rephrase that. Does that represent an ongoing appropriation of those resources that come in through fees? And it's self-supporting in that way, but the appropriation language is necessary.
Chair Dibble, thank you for that question. It is needed as an ongoing funding into the future. There is ongoing work that is involved with this training, retraining, support of additional transactions that will come through as as the population of Minnesota increases, and we anticipate that these transactions will continue to flow steadily as part of our future customer demand.
Our crack fiscal staff is telling me I'm misrepresenting, misconstruing the amendment, so please, there is an ongoing base appropriation, which I was missing. Ms. Boyd.
Mr. Chair, just to, oh, sorry. I actually need that. Mr. Chair, just to clarify, so the amendment A14 is amending the A6 amendment. The A6 amendment had appropriations of about 1.4 million at each of 24 and 25. And then starting in 26, there'll be a base amount of 891,000 added to the current biennial budget base. So that would be the ongoing. What the amendment does is change the fiscal year 2025 amount from 1.4 million to 707,000, and then deletes lines 22 and 23 of the A6 so that the amount in the out years would be the same 707,000. It would not change to 891 or any other amount.
All right. Thank you. My apologies for misunderstanding that. All right, so Senator Jasinski. Oh, you're on my list. You must have scratched your nose or something.
No, but while I have the microphone, if we could keep Deputy Commissioner up there, I think a lot of our amendments are going to have some questions for you. So I'm just going to save you some back and forth time and out of courtesy. Thank you.
All right, if you don't mind. Thank you. All right, anything further? Members, Senator Coleman renews her motion on the A14. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. No. Sounds like it failed. Amendment fails. All right. Members, questions, discussion, or amendments?
Mr. Chair,
Senator Coleman.
I'd like to offer the A27 amendment, please.
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
The A27, please.
A27. Senator Coleman offers the A27 amendment. I think that's also in our packets. Yes. All right, this has to do with commercial driver's license. Senator Coleman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I recently learned a new phrase called belts and suspenders, and this would apply to that. This makes sure that we are in compliance with federal rules and regulations. The intent of this bill is for everyone to have a driver's license. This is making sure that we are not applying that to commercial driver's licenses. Pretty short amendment, and would love to hear your thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you. I will turn to the author who's conferring. Senator Mohammed.
Mr. Chair, Senator Coleman, thank you for the amendment. So looking at the bill, this bill does not apply to commercial licensing, but I'd be happy to have discussions about it and hear why you'd want this.
All right, thank you. Senator Coleman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Senator. This is just to make sure that we're checking all the boxes, dotting all the i's, crossing all the t's, and that the intent of this bill is what gets through at the end of the day.
I have sorry, Senator Lang, I'll go to you.
Senator Mohammed, is the intent of the bill to allow for commercial driver's license?
Senator Mohammed.
Mr. Chair, Senator Lang, the intent of the bill is to allow people who want to get a driver's license, regardless of documentation or immigration status, to be able to drive. So not for commercial licensing.
So you're
Senator Lang.
You're okay with the amendment, or you're opposed? I just didn't quite catch what you were saying there.
I said I would.
Senator Mohammed.
I was open to hearing why Senator Coleman offered the amendment, because this bill does not apply to commercial licenses.
Right. Thank you. All right. Anything further, members? Senator Coleman.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'd like to request a roll call.
All right. Senator Coleman requests a roll call vote. A roll call vote is granted. Anything further, members? I did have a quick question for Deputy Commissioner Zhang. I think as we contemplated this in discussion earlier prior to the meeting, and thank you, by the way, Senator Jasinski, for providing. I know we haven't seen all your amendments, but I appreciate seeing these first 10. The only question we had, Deputy Commissioner Zhang, was, is there any implication outside the language of this amendment, A27. Do you see it? Do you have it in front of you, the A27? Yeah. Anything that we're not picking up on, anything that we should be aware of that we need to know before we take an informed vote?
Chair W, thank you for the question. Under current federal law, this provision or this proposal would be in alignment with our current practice. Anyone that doesn't have citizenship is not eligible for a commercial driver's license. And so we don't have any concerns. The agency doesn't have any concerns about the administration of the proposal, but did want to clarify that under federal law, we already are in the spirit of this proposal already practice that.
Thank you. Senator Lang.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think maybe if Senate Council could address this and maybe give us the once over. I don't really know how the rules would apply when it came to, making a living with a commercial driver's license versus how this bill would relate to that. Sorry to put you on the spot.
That's why they pay her the big bucks. That's her job, to be put on the spot.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Senator Lang and members. The provisions in the bill relate to a non-compliant driver's license, which is a Class D license. Commercial driver's licenses are a sort of separate category of statutes outside of the bill that are governed by federal law. And there's a statute on the books, it's 171.161 for anybody that wants to follow along, that basically says anytime you issue a CDL, it has to comply with federal law. So that's already on the books. There's nothing in here to get around that. So people will still have to comply with all of the federal laws, which include showing citizenship and I think certain types of lawful presence to get a CDL.
My technical people tell me the audio is quite soft, so when we're all speaking, please speak close to your microphones. Thank you. All right, Senator Lang, does that respond to your question? All right, thank you. Anything further, members? Roll call has been requested. Senator Coleman renews her motion on the A27. The clerk will take the roll.
Chair Dibble? Yes. Vice Chair Morrison?
Yes.
Senator Jasinski?
Aye.
Senator Carlson?
Aye.
Senator Coleman?
Aye.
Senator Herr?
Aye.
Senator Howe?
Aye.
Senator Lang?
Aye.
Senator McEwen?
Aye.
Senator Port?
Aye.
There being 10 yeses and 0 noes, the amendment is adopted. All right, members, questions, conversation, amendments. Senator Lang.
I have the A28, Mr. Chair.
Senator Lang offers the A28, which is in your packets. Senator Lang.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There we go. Sorry. Thank you, Mr. Chair. The A28 is, well, actually, before I get here, I've been in the Senate now 7 years. In my 7 years in the Senate, I've made some mistakes when it came to legislation. I know Senator Dibble would probably attest to that. But my point is, I want to ask you, Senator Mohammed, about longevity, about this bill, how this bill becomes law and how that law progresses into the future. And what I mean by that is I've written bills in the past that have become law. They've been changed since that point in that short 7-year time span. Also, in my time here, I've seen majorities change. This bill is not a bill that, I've got several farming communities. I have ag producers and businesses in my district that are very supportive of the idea of this bill. I also have law enforcement officers in my district who I've talked to at length. And to be honest, I was on the fence for a long time back and forth about this bill. The bill that Senator Champion proposed just a few short years ago, I think would probably have a lot of bipartisan support. I truly believe it would. And that bill would do the same thing as what your bill would do, at least to the people sitting behind you now. To the people in my district, it would do the same thing. The bill that you have in front of us today is different. You've had a couple of rather red meat amendments that have come through that, not nonpartisan necessarily. But there are some issues with your bill that, of course, that we have issues with as a Republican caucus. When it comes to longevity, what's going to make this bill last? What's going to stop the next Republican majority from messing with it is bipartisanship. And that's realistically the way that this amendment probably starts with. So what the amendment does is it changes on page 3, line 10, delete, to attest to, and declare under the penalty of perjury of applicants. Now, this is very similar to many other sections of law the state of Minnesota has. It's a standard practice, as we in the Senate often try to cure ourselves with. So what it also does is aligns it somewhat with federal language. Now, personally, I have a little bit of an issue when you say attest to. So I guess the question that I would pose to you as I offer this amendment is, how do you want this bill to survive? How do you want this bill to look when it becomes law forever?
Senator Mohammed.
Mr. Chair, Senator Lang, thank you so much for that question and for offering the amendment. When I wanted to take this bill, it was because I want to protect every Minnesotan who lives here, regardless of their status. And back in 2003, when former Governor Pawlenty brought this bill, our legislature said no. And so I think we have an opportunity, I made that clear last Tuesday, to be able to make sure that we protect those folks and restore the right to drive. As far as the amendment goes, Minnesotans who have status do not have to declare their residency under perjury. And we don't want to create a process where we have second-class driver's license folks here in our state. We want to make sure everyone here is protected, can drive safely, freely, and without being afraid of deportation. I think this bill does that. It's been a bill that's been worked on for over 15 years. I know Senator Champion has been working on it for a long, long time, and we've had these discussions thoroughly and honestly. Like yourself, you were new at one point, I'm new. I'd like to think of myself as somebody who works across the aisle, or at least wants to, now that I'm new. And part of that is having honest conversations about what it means to protect our citizens, our non-citizens here. And so I don't support this amendment because I don't want to create a process where we're putting people in positions where they're not treated like everybody else.
Senator Howe.
Thank you, Chair Dibble. Could staff explain is there a difference how people are treated? Would this amendment apply to everyone on a driver's license, or just those getting this different driver's, or does this apply to everyone? That's the question. Does this apply to everyone, or does it apply just to some?
Council Stengel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Senator Howe, and members. The amendment language would apply to anyone who applies for a non-compliant driver's license. I also wanted to point out that under current law, any application that's submitted by anybody for any type of driver's license or ID card has to be, the law says all applicants must sign the application and declare under penalty of perjury that the information and documentation presented is true and correct. So there is, under current law, a penalty, a perjury issue for all applications across the board. And this one specifically references just the non-compliant licenses.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Lang.
I was going to make a point, but thank you, Senate Council, for making my point. That's all I was going to say.
Senator Champion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One of the things I would like to remind this committee of is that I know that I've been carrying the driver's license for our bill, and I know I worked, hard as is Senator Mohammed in order to find a pathway in order to make this work. And you know how you get the benefit of hindsight, and you know how people say hindsight is 20/20. One of the things I would have done differently would have been, I know there was some discussion about whether on this driver's license that it should say for driving purposes only, right? Because there was some other concerns that now, as I look at it, would not have been the best thing to do, because then someone could extrapolate from when they produced that driver's license, why the difference between their driver's license and someone else's driver's license. But what is consistent is the fact what we wanted to accomplish even then was to make sure that every individual who drives on our roads go through tests and demonstrate their capacity in order to be safe on our roads. And then for them also to get insurance. And I like to also remind people of this, that there's no piece of legislation that doesn't require us to tweak at times, because then things change and you recognize that there's a couple of things that you would like to do different. But here's the most telling thing. Those who were here in 2015, and even some of the people who says, oh, I would vote for Senator Champion's bill in a heartbeat, it's great, didn't vote for Senator Champion's bill. So what I'm suggesting is that the principle is still rich and is still right. Here's an opportunity for us to do what we were doing prior to 203. And all I'm suggesting is that the language that's here, if it is consistent, and Senator Mohammed will make that decision, but we shouldn't do anything that would make this license stick out differently from anything else. So that is my contribution to this wonderful and rich conversation.
So I'll weigh in here. I think as we first saw this amendment, we might not have fully understood it, as evidenced by the nature of the response from the chief author. But with the information provided by counsel, we now understand that all of those who, regardless of citizenship status, who would apply for what we call the non-compliant driver's license, the driver's license that you cannot use to board an airplane, real ID and EDL, and other forms of license and identity are subject to a penalty of perjury if the information provided is not true. Everyone is treated in an even-keeled manner. I would suggest, Chief Author, that this may be an acceptable amendment. So
Yes.
how would you respond to that suggestion?
Mr. Chair, I accept the suggestion. Thank you.
All right. Anything further, members? All right. Senator Lang renews his motion on the A28 amendment. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion passes. Members, discussion, questions, or amendments?
Mr. Chair.
Senator Jasinski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And again, coming into last week's meeting, I totally understand the intent of this bill, and I totally support the intent of the bill. I had discussions with Senator Mohammed about that. And I have a very hardworking district that has a lot of people in my district that have manufacturing jobs that this would benefit tremendously. And I totally understand. I really appreciate the chamber, the Minnesota Chamber, getting behind this and explaining the need for this across the state of Minnesota. And again, the intent of the bill, I totally agree with. I can support, and I would vote for. I am concerned of the motion or the mission creep of the bill, from the original standpoint, what we saw from Senator Champion's bill till now. I think the Minnesota driver's license is a gateway document that could be gotten here and then go to other states and expand on, and that's a little bit of my concern. And I believe the bill in front of us could cause some degradation of the driver's license accuracy. So that's my concern. But again, I totally understand. I support the intent 100%. But I really do believe Senator Champion's bill back in 2013 was a bill that the majority of us can support. and see that across the state, what that would do for the people here this evening or this afternoon. So with that, I would offer the A20 amendment.
Senator Jasinski offers the A20 amendment, which is coming around now.
And Mr. Chair, I can explain it while it's coming around. It's
Certainly.
pretty straightforward. This
Senator
is
Jasinski.
Senator Champion's bill from 2013, the driver's license for all bill. As it was done back then, I think it was the third engrossment that passed through most of the committees. So with that, I would open that up to the author to see if she'd be open to that.
We will
And Mr. Chair,
allow the author to absorb the amendment, and we will give some time for the amendment to come to members.
and Mr. Chair, ask for a roll call.
A roll call has been requested. A roll call is granted. All right, so. So. Senator Champion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Although there was a lot of work that was done back in 2015, in fact, I see some of the folks who really were instrumental in working with me on getting something before the body that we thought would be helpful at that time. We know that even when this language came through before, and I worked hard with a cross-section of people in order to get it done, that folks did not vote for it at that time other than my colleagues. And as I mentioned earlier, that there's always things you look back on and you say, okay, that was at that time. And now you look at where you are today and whether you would do the same thing today that you were considering before. Yes, I would do things like make sure that people are not treated like a second-class citizen. Make sure that people are able to take their children to school and go to work and do all the things that all of our districts really seem to support. But to adopt it today when it was not adopted or embraced by everyone then, I think breaches the notion of time. And time is neutral, but it's what you do in that time that really makes the difference. So from my vantage point, as much as I love all the work that I did back then, I would do the things that we are looking forward to right now because we have worked hard on what is before you right now, and we think this is appropriate. So I would ask you to vote no on the bill that I put forward in 2015. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Mohammed.
Mr. Chair, thank you, Senator Champion. I think he's articulated it correctly and fairly that times have passed. A lot has changed in the last number of years, and I'm also asking for members to vote no.
Ms. Iyer, sorry you were focused on something else, but members, as Senator Jasinski explained in the presentation of the amendment.
We can't hear you, Mr. Chair.
Oh, sorry. As Senator Jasinski explained in the presentation of the amendment, this is the champion bill of a few years ago. And of course, probably one of the key features is that there are identifying aspects on the license. And there's some other elements around election judges, training, et cetera, et cetera. Ms. Iyer, you had in your presentation and testimony last week talked about what is different today versus what was true when we passed the champion bill, Real ID and EDL. Can you just revisit those remarks for us?
Happy to. Thank you. Thank you, Senator Dibble. The major difference is that prior to 2013, when Senator Champion offered his bill, at that time, there was only one type of Minnesota driver's license, what is now known as the standard Class D non-compliant license.
No sé si me pueden escuchar, Irving, si me puedes escuchar, me puedes dar una señal porque no te puedo escuchar yo. Pero lo importante de ahorita es darles una narrativa rápida de qué es lo que está pasando. Desafortunadamente en el momento no contamos con un intérprete ahorita, pero lo que es importante que usted sepa es que la propuesta de licencias para todos está en la audiencia del Comité de Transporte en el Senado. La autora Zainab Mohammed y el coautor, que fue el autor principal de la licencia por muchos años, el senador Bobby Joe Champion, están defendiendo la propuesta en este momento en el Comité de Transporte. A quien usted está viendo en pantalla es a la directora ejecutiva del Centro
Members, any further discussion? Senator Lang.
el Centro Legal de Inmigrantes, o el Immigrant Law Center, Dina Iyer, y en este momento se está defendiendo la propuesta. Lo que usted está escuchando es que la mayoría de los miembros del Comité de Transporte que están siendo más vocales son los miembros del comité son los miembros republicanos. Estos miembros republicanos están tratando de bloquear la propuesta, tratando de alargar el proceso y tratando de pasar enmiendas para una licencia marcada, para una licencia diferente o un documento diferente o que se implemente mucho más tiempo adelante. Y la senadora Mohammed y el senador Bobby Joe Champion están en este momento diciéndoles básicamente que eso no es posible o que eso no es lo que ellos quieren, porque lo que los republicanos alegan es que ellos están completamente a favor de las licencias, pero en el bill que se pasó, que se quería mover hace algunos años. Y era un bill, era una propuesta un poco más moderada, porque la configuración del gobierno era más moderado. Necesitábamos votos republicanos para pasar esto. Y el argumento del senador Bobby Joe Champion es que cuando él trajo estas propuestas moderadas, aún así ellos no votaron a favor de esta propuesta. Entonces, él no confía que si él aprueba estas enmiendas, ellos van a hacer lo que dicen que van a hacer. Entonces, es un poco de ir y venir en la politiquería de este bill lo quiero apoyar, pero quiero que pases, que las desmarcadas o que le cambie la orientación o que atrases el proceso. Y el senador, con mucho respeto, y la senadora Mohammed están defendiendo el avance de la propuesta. Vamos a, con lo que ven es, ahorita en su pantalla, ven al senador Jeff Howe, que es un senador de Greater Minnesota, que también dice, yo hubiera apoyado esta propuesta, pero la realidad es que por muchos años esta propuesta estuvo disponible y esos mismos senadores no la quisieron escuchar, no la quisieron mover a comité, no la quisieron apoyar y no la quisieron votar. Entonces, en eso están ahorita, en el ir y venir de esta dinámica por más de 15 años. Y bueno, eso es lo que les puedo contar en resumen. Esperemos que para las próximas audiencias podamos conseguir un intérprete. Si usted conoce intérpretes, mándenos su información. Si usted es un intérprete, mándenos su información. Porque necesitamos intérpretes que puedan responder con poco tiempo de anticipación porque estas audiencias cambian. Entonces déjenos saber, mándenos un mensaje privado y pues lo que usted ve en pantalla es la senadora Mohammed y el senador Champion defendiendo esta propuesta de una manera muy educada, muy articulada y muy comprometida con pasar esta propuesta este año. Muchas gracias y nos vemos.
Look at the fact that you're in good standing in your state, but you have to abide by their laws and all those other things. So I wouldn't want to get too far afoot, Senator Carlson, because I want us to be very clear as to what we are trying to accomplish here. What we're trying to accomplish here is for Minnesotans and those who are in our great state have the ability to make sure that their children get to their soccer game or folks are able to get to work. So I would hope that we would stay focused on that. And I would ask you all to vote against the A20 amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. All right, members, anything further? All right, roll call has been requested. The clerk will take the roll on the Jasinski A20 amendment.
Chair Dibble,
No.
Vice Chair Morrison,
No.
Senator Jasinski,
Aye.
Senator Carlson,
No.
Senator Coleman,
Aye.
Senator Herr,
No.
Senator Howe,
Aye.
Senator Lang,
Aye.
Senator McEwen,
No.
Senator Port,
No.
There being 4 in favor and 6 opposed, the amendment is not adopted. All right, members, questions, discussion, or amendments?
Mr. Chair,
Senator Jasinski.
I somehow didn't think that was going to pass, but I will tell you, I would like to offer the A34 amendment. And while that one's being let out, I can certainly explain it. It really is the Senator Champion/Dibble bill from 2013, but it adds in all the language from Senate File 27 that makes the bill better than Senator Champion's. No offense, Senator Champion, but I tried to make the bill a little bit better and offered some things that combine your Senate File 27 and your former bill that would actually go through. I'll go through the things, or maybe I'll have Senate staff do that, go through the differences or what's been added, or if not, I have a sheet that I can go through. If Ms. Stengel wants me to do it, or if you want to do it, I can. Okay, I'll go through what I understand this amendment does. It takes Senator Champion, Senator Dibble's bill from Senate File 27, from previous, and brings this bill in and adds additional primary and secondary document for pages 4 and 5 and 6 of this driving privilege license. Number 2, it states that the driving privilege card must look identical to a non-compliant license, except for what it was written in the 2013 bill. Number 3, all the general requirements from Senate File 27 were added in. Number 4, it added in the appropriations, elects not to specify the language restrictions from use from the A6, which was adopted. And number 5, finally, have the same data protections for driving privileges pieces as they were in Article 2 of Senate File 27, except that the Secretary of State is not included in those protections and have the repealer. Again, I would really like to see this bill be a bipartisan bill. I've been around for 6 years, and I think it's always much more satisfying to have a bipartisan bill. I've worked with the former Senator Thomasoni and many others to try and do a lot of bipartisan bills. And my concern is the bill as it's drafted is not going to get any bipartisan support. And we are in an environment of one-party control in Minnesota. And I think that's dangerous not to compromise with each other to allow basically half of the state or 50% of the population to also have input on a bill. So with that, again, I offer the A34. If staff wants to go through an additional that it says that I commented on.
Senator Stengel, Senator Jasinski, Council Stengel says you did a great job, unless anyone wants further detail or has questions of her. All right. Senator Champion, Senator Mohammed.
Mr. Chair, in the interest of not going, deeply into it, we are asking the committee not to adopt the A34 amendment.
Thank you. Anything further?
Mr. Chair, request roll call.
Senator Jasinski requests a roll call. Roll call is granted. And I just, Senator Jasinski, I think you're, I agree. I would love there to be a bipartisan support for this. It's been elusive in the recent past. Actually, I don't know that we've ever had a vote from your party on in the affirmative on this idea, even when Senator Champion passed it. But times change, awareness changes, sensitivities change. I see some potential in this proposal. It is 14 pages of new language. So I'm going to vote no, but I want us to continue the conversation. All right, anything further? Senator Herr.
Mr. Chair. Okay, Mr. Chair. So this amendment will override the bipartisan amendment that we support, two of them earlier. Is that correct?
Excellent point, Senator Herr. Yes, it would.
Okay.
It would
so
displace. Actually, I don't know if the language of those amendments is
Just
brought
wanna-
into this proposal.
Just want to note that.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
And thanks, Senator. Again, going to the two amendments that haven't passed are purely technical. I mean, it's really technical. It doesn't look at any of the intent and extent. I support the theory of the bill. The bipartisan support were truly technical and clarifications as we've called belts and suspenders, truly technical. So if that's the only thing that's going to be bipartisan in this bill, it's unfortunate, I believe. I think we should have more of a say on this for the whole state of Minnesota than purely a technical amendment. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. All right. Anything further? All right. The clerk will call the roll on the Jasinski A34 amendment.
Chair Dibble,
No.
Vice Chair Morrison,
No.
Senator Jasinski,
Aye.
Senator Carlson,
No.
Senator Coleman,
Aye.
Senator Herr,
No.
Senator Howe,
Aye.
Senator Lang,
Aye.
Senator McEwen,
No.
Senator Port,
No.
By a vote of 4 in favor and 6 opposed, the amendment is not adopted. I think I'm supposed to tap the gavel, aren't I? All right, getting used to this. All right, Senator Howe.
Thank you, Chair Dibble. And, you know, I have a lot of folks in my district that this would really help. And one of the things that I've always considered, and I truly believe we need to do more of, is help these folks become citizens. And I did actually work with one of my constituents, and it made it clear to me that we have to do some immigration reform because it was painstakingly a long process and it wasn't cheap. It cost a lot of money. So in light of that, I think the best thing we could do is to put some money forward to try and help these folks actually become citizens. And actually, then we would minimize the effect and actually help these folks become legal and be a voting members of this society. So with that, Chair Dibble, I offer the A30 amendment.
Senator Howe offers the A30 amendment.
And folks, what this basically does is it changes the appropriations and takes 4 of the FTEs that are currently being funded and shift that funding to actually provide money to help people actually become citizens of this great state and this country.
All right, so give us one moment to engross the amendment.
You know, it was one of a great moment in my life when I was able to attend the ceremony when my constituent actually became a citizen. That is quite a ceremony. It was quite an event, and it really had an impact on me. And I wish we could do more to make that happen. So this is my attempt.
So members, members, this amends the author's amendment. And it changes, as Senator Howe described, the appropriation. And it would be a general, let's see here. So yeah, so it would, the crux of it is it would appropriate funds from the general fund to the Supreme Court, and in turn granted to legal services programs to improve access to legal representation in immigration law matters. All right, With that, Senator Champion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We're asking the committee to vote no. As you know, immigration is a federal issue, and any funds used in order to help someone go through that process, which we believe it's an important notion, should be done on a federal level, and we should not do it here. This also takes money from the general fund and gives it to the Supreme Court for civil services for the purpose of immigration matters, and we just think that expands what we're trying to accomplish here. It's an important notion when you think in terms of immigration, but it should not be here in this bill. So I will say that we should vote no, but I'll defer also to the chief author.
I'll call on Senator Mohammed and then Senator Howe. Senator Mohammed.
Mr. Chair, Senator Champion, thank you. I do believe that immigration is a federal issue, and I think that's, I know this because I'm an immigrant. Usually that's kind of how things are done, but I want to ask Vina, who's an immigration lawyer, what her thoughts are.
Ms. Iyer.
Senator Howe, Senator Dibble, what I can partially speak to this. I also want to make sure that as the executive director of the Immigrant Law Center of Minnesota, that I am speaking appropriately, because we are, there are funds that might come to us. So I don't want to speak out of turn or speak where there is a conflict. But that said, it's true. Immigration and the ability to become a citizen is controlled by the federal government. That said, there are localities across the country, including Minnesota, that support legal services in order to, for example, assist individuals to become citizens of the United States. Additionally, I can confirm that, in fact, there are legal services for program funds that are distributed through the general fund of the Supreme Court. I cannot, however, speak to what the senator's opinion is as to how appropriations related to this bill ought to be distributed.
And I'll just say, just as a matter of record, you can speak to any aspect of this amendment or any aspect of the bill, including the funding. People sit in that at that table all the time, advocating for funds for themselves and their own organizations all the time. It's on this side of the table where the conflicts might arise. So we have to be more aware of those sorts of things. But when you're advocating on your own behalf to
Thank you.
Our decisions, you're not representing a conflict. Senator Howe.
Thank you, Chair Dibble. And if she could confirm for me, then there are funds currently from the state general fund that go to these legal services, if I'm not correct. Is that not what I heard?
Ms. Iyer.
Yes, there is funding that goes to legal services organizations through the Supreme Court, through the Legal Services Advisory Committee.
So this is not out of
Senator
line.
Howe.
I kind of thought that was right when we drafted the.
Let me please pause before you respond,
Thank
and
you.
then I'll acknowledge you,
Sorry.
and then you can speak. Senator Howe.
Thank you, Chair Dibble. I was hoping we drafted this incorrect, and we drafted it correctly, and we were going to try to help more folks become citizens so they don't get entangled in this. So it is a state's issue because we deal with it, and we currently deal with that funding, and this would actually improve that. I think it's the greatest thing we can do for these folks is help them to become citizens. So that's why we promulgated the amendment, and I think it makes good sense to try and make that happen. Thank you, Chair Dibble.
All right. Senator Lang. Senator Howe, follow up, and then Senator Lang.
Just one, I'd like to ask for a roll call on the amendment. Thank you, Chair Dibble.
A roll call. Thank you. Roll call has been requested. A roll call granted. Senator Lang.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In preparation for today, there was a couple of amendments I looked at. I'm like, that doesn't mean anything. I think this one actually does. I think this addresses something that is kind of at the core of the problem of what we're trying to end around with this bill, which really is what we're doing. We're end arounding federal law, right? We're not, for a good reason, I think. This is the first time as a senator I'll be able to say I support legal immigration, and I'm going to put my money where my mouth is and support this amendment, put it on this bill, let the judiciary guys fight it out, and if they wanted to attach it to something else. But we go from there. I think this is a good amendment.
Senator Champion and then Senator Mohammed.
Mr. Chair, from my understanding, and council can correct me if I'm wrong, what's happening in this amendment is that Senator Howe is lowering the amount of money that goes to DVS in order to make sure it benefits the program that we're here for. And then he's taking that money from DVS and giving it to the Supreme Court for what we understand to be an important and worthy cause. But that's what I see happening here. And if council or fiscal staff can confirm that, that would help reset us and make sure that we are clear as to what the amendment is doing. Even though it's for a good purpose, it still undermines the very notion as to why we're here. So, Mr. Chair, if someone can help us there.
Ms. Boyd, can you help us understand or clarify the points that Senator Champion raises?
Mr. Chair, yes, if I heard and understood Senator Champion's questions correctly, the total appropriation in this bill or in this amendment is the same as what's in the underlying bill or in the A6 that amended it, but it splits it so that there's still an amount coming from Vehicle Services Operating Account to DPS to enact the bill, to the requirements of the act. And then another portion is going from the general fund to the Supreme Court to be distributed under law to legal services programs. The total is the same as in the bill. Of course, in the bill, it's now one source, the Vehicle Services Operating Account. This would split it into two and introduce a general fund appropriation.
All right, thank you. Senator Lang. Or
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I think we can fix that. We'll do committee work in committee for the first time in a while, but I think you're going to want to note that this is a Republican say, I'll offer an oral amendment to fix that and take it from the general fund.
I believe it already comes from the general fund, and it looks to me like, I think we tried to draft it where it was we were going to reduce the number of folks anyway during that period of time. So we just took that money and took it out of the general fund, and the money's the same going to DVS.
Yes, Ms. Boyd.
Mr. Chair and Senator Howe, the fiscal note had, if I can recall correctly, the fiscal note asked for FTEs of 12 exam and inspection specialists and then 4 administrative staff in the first 2 years. The exam and inspection specialists went down to 6 in the 26 and 27 subsequent years, but the administrative staff remained the same. The amount that's on lines 110 to 113 of the amendment, that would represent the amount from the fiscal note for the administrative staff. So the amount for the exam specialists that would administer the exams to the new applicants would be the same to DPS under lines 16 through 19.
That's correct. I think, Chair Dibble?
Senator Howe.
I think where we're looking to is when we look at in their fiscal note on page 3, when you assume that 77,000 eligible individuals and approximately 20% or 15,400 would apply for non-compliant credential in the first year, and then it becomes available, and then 10% or 7,700 after that for each of the following years. That's where we're cutting this. That's where we're trying to get the savings there, because you're actually reducing the workload. So we should be able to reduce the staff and take that money and shift that like we were talking about. So that was the intent of what we were trying to do.
All right, I have Senator Port with a question, and then I'll call on Senator Champion.
Senator Champion answered my question. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Senator Champion.
So, Mr. Chair, just so I'm clear, and if fiscal can make sure I'm clear, because there's lots of moving parts here, is that we know that they're bifurcating where the funds are coming from, general funds and from the special account. But what is also happening is that the FTEs that the department needs in order to do this work, they are cutting down the number of FTEs and taking that money and then applying it to the Supreme Court and others, even though it's coming from two different accounts. So that's my understanding, and perhaps we can get the department to clarify if I'm right, and then fiscal can also chime in.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, that, I'm kind of confused too. I mean, we're taking from the special revenue account, but then we're applying general fund, and so I'm not sure how, yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah, thanks. Ms. Boyd.
Mr. Chair, and Senators, the amounts on line 1.6 through 1.9 does not specify what FTE should be funded with this amount. Those numbers were just taken to represent the amount stated as necessary for the exam and inspection specialists, which in the fiscal note would go from 12 FTEs in 24 and 25 down to 6 in the out years. The amounts on 1.6 through 1.9 is sufficient for that amount. It's the other 4 positions that start in 24, 25 and would be ongoing. That amount represented in the fiscal note would be switched to the general fund and go to the Supreme Court. So you are correct that this would allow for fewer FTEs than requested in the fiscal note.
So, Ms. Boyd, how do the dollars get from the special revenue account to the general fund? I'm not tracking that.
Mr. Chair, there's no transfer of funds. It's just the original bill had an appropriation from the Vehicle Services Operating Account. This amendment would reduce that and add a new general fund appropriation.
But for a
So there's
different,
no
for a
shifting.
different purpose.
For a different purpose.
Right. So Senator Champion's point stands, which is there's a cut to the agency in its ability to implement the provisions of this bill. Period. Then the second part, paragraph B, adds this 2-part general fund appropriation for what may or may not be a meritorious purpose. Senator McEwen.
Thank you, Chair Dibble. Senator Howe, I really actually like the spirit of this amendment. But I wonder if this is the right place for it, and especially with the complications we're hearing about the funding. I mean, I'd love to see some bipartisan support for more legal aid funding and more funding to help people as they seek citizenship. That'd be fantastic. But I would suggest that we just get on with the business of this bill, and then we can talk about how we can come together around making sure that we have appropriate amounts for legal aid to help people in their seeking citizenship.
Thank you. All right. Anything further, members? All right, we're clear on the bill, on the amendments. Senator Howe renews his motion on the A30 amendment, and the clerk will take the roll.
Chair Dibble,
No.
Vice Chair Morrison,
No.
Senator Jasinski,
Aye.
Senator Carlson,
No.
Senator Coleman,
Aye.
Senator Herr,
No.
Senator Howe,
Aye.
Senator Lang,
Aye.
Senator McEwen,
No.
Senator Port,
No.
By a vote of 4 votes in favor and 6 votes against, the A30 is not adopted. All right, members. Senator Coleman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to offer the A35 amendment, please.
Senator Coleman offers the A35 amendment. Coming around. And Senator Coleman, would you like to start the explanation as it makes its way around?
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, the A35 amendment, as you know, this bill separates out or makes a firewall for sharing data. However, I have some concerns about how this data may impact victims of a crime if they have non-citizen status. And so what the amendment attempts to do is it allows data to be shared with law enforcement solely for the purpose to fill out the form, I believe the I-918 Supplement B and any successor forms, which would help undocumented immigrants if they are a victim of a crime. And so this is to make sure that nobody is not coming forward to talk about their crimes, to prosecute because of their immigration status.
So we'll definitely need the attorney's help. This may be a matter for Judiciary Committee. Every amendment is germane in every committee. That being said, this is maybe who knows, maybe it's really simple and we'll just get on with it. Ms. Iyer, please help us understand.
Thank you, Senator Dibble. I'll start by making sure that folks understand what the Form I-918 Supplement B is, because I think that will help to evaluate the amendment. That is relates to what's called the U visa. The U visa is a visa that is available for individuals who are victims of certain significant crimes and who cooperate with law enforcement in the investigation and prosecution of those crimes. Through that process, law enforcement needs to certify that that individual has in fact been helpful in the prosecution of the crime. Our office processes hundreds of U visa applications each year and works with law enforcement in a number of ways in trying to get these certifications. Based on my knowledge and understanding of what is in DVS, and especially particularly the U visa certification process, I can't see any reason why law enforcement would need any information from DPS in order to act on a U visa certification. They're going to have that information on their own by having the information about the fact that the individual was a victim of a crime and that they cooperated. That's all they actually need to attest to, and there's nothing in the DPS system that's going to inform them more about that. Thank you. And thank you, Senator Coleman, for the amendment question.
Thank you. Members, Senator Coleman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's my understanding that quite often the victims of these crimes do not know that this form and this process is made available to them. And oftentimes law enforcement are the ones having to initiate these conversations and initiate this process to help these victims of crimes out. And so what this does is it allows this data to be shared with law enforcement so that they may reach out solely for the purpose of helping the victim of a crime, which is the purpose of this amendment.
Thank you. Anything further? Senator Mohammed, Senator Champion, any response or reaction?
Mr. Chair, Senator Coleman, thank you so much. I think that Vina answered this correctly. We already have processes in place, and I asked the members to vote no on this amendment.
Members, I understand what Senator Coleman is trying to accomplish, and I think there may be some merits. I do think this is worth more understanding and more conversation, maybe more expertise than we contain among this membership. I would, if you want to go to a vote, that's your right and your prerogative. But if this amendment does not prevail, I would strongly encourage you, Senator Coleman, and members and anyone who's listening to continue this conversation about this idea on into judiciary, which is its next stop. Anything further, members? All right, all those in favor of the A35, please say aye. Opposed, say no. No. The motion does not prevail. The A35 is not adopted. Members. Senator Coleman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to offer the A25 amendment.
Senator Coleman offers the A25. Members, that's in our packets. Senator Coleman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. This amendment attempts to maintain the spirit of the bill, which is to offer driver's license for all who need them in Minnesota, which again, I agree with and support, but attempts to calm concerns of election integrity or the 0.001% chance that this may be used for nefarious means. And so what this does is put on the front of these driver's license that it explicitly states not for voting, just for driving. The words not for voting will be on the front, and the intent is to make sure that the main purpose of this bill remains intact while safeguarding any election concerns that may surround it.
Thank you. Senator Mohammed.
Mr. Chair, Senator Coleman, thank you so much for the amendment. This bill does not impact voting. And so I'm going to ask the members to vote no on it.
Senator Champion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And if I can elaborate on that a little more, if a person is going to register to vote or do anything like that, they have to attest to some things already. And so the license itself is not what would be criminal. It would be the act of saying you're a citizen and that you are allowed to vote. That would be the problem. So even though Senator Coleman, your thoughts are in good place, is not the appropriate place for this, or to put it on the driver's license in the future. So with that being said,
buenas tardes, les habla Emilia González Ábalos, directora de Unidos Minnesota otra vez. Les traigo un poco más de información. Discúlpenos a toda la audiencia que no habla inglés. Estamos trabajando bien fuerte para encontrar más intérpretes disponibles. Si conoce usted alguno, por favor, mándenos mensaje. Pero ahorita, aquí está Joaquín. Entonces, la actualización que le traigo es que usted sigue escuchando obstáculos que le están trayendo los senadores republicanos a los autores demócratas de la propuesta, la senadora Zainab Mohammed y al senador Bobby Joe. Que usted está viendo ahorita en su pantalla es el senador Scott Dibble, que también es demócrata, que también fue autor de las licencias y que también apoya la propuesta. Entonces es bien importante estas dos últimas, estas dos cosas que le voy a... En su pantalla, usted ha visto mucho la participación. El senador es uno peloncito, como con bigote. Este senador es el senador del área donde vivimos muchas de nuestras comunidades. Ese senador, el senador Howe, representa el área de Owatonna y el área de Fairmont. Ahí hay mucha comunidad que trabaja en las empacadoras y de la cual depende esa economía local. Y el senador Howe está trayendo muchos obstáculos a esta propuesta, e incluso trató de mover una tienda que removía recursos del Departamento de Vehículos y Motores para invertirlos en ayudar realmente a los inmigrantes legales que necesitan volverse ciudadanos. Entonces estamos dando una serie de distracciones para hacer este proceso tedioso y para triangular a los autores del senador Bobby Joe y a la senadora Zainab Mohammed. El otro senador que también está trayendo muchos retos a la propuesta es el senador Gasinski. Más bien, el senador Gasinski es el que es senador del distrito de Fairmont y de Owatonna. Ese es el senador más, un viejito, con canoso, de pelo más largo. Y el senador pelón, él es el senador del área de Centro Minnesota, por el área de Soap Rapids, que también hay muchas empacadoras y muchos trabajadores de agricultura. Nosotros tenemos miembros en esa área, en nuestro programa de Fe y Justicia, les mandamos un saludo cordial. Es el senador de esa área de Soap Rapids, el senador peloncito, que está tratando de atrasar el proceso, que no quiere apoyar la licencia, el bill como está escrito. Y el senador de Faribault, de sur de Minnesota, que representa el área de Faribault y el área de Owatonna, es el senador Gasinski. Ese senador también está tratando de hacerla largas, de bloquear la propuesta. En algunos de los comentarios que estábamos escuchando que qué vergüenza que ni los senadores demócratas ni republicanos habían pasado esta propuesta. Y le voy a decir a las personas que Ha costado mucho trabajo mover a los senadores, pero no es una cosa de voluntad nada más, es una cosa de tener el número de votos. Incluso para poner una audiencia, para que el director del Comité del Transporte, que es el senador Divo, traiga esta propuesta a la audiencia para que se pueda revisar, se necesita voluntad política. Y en el pasado, cuando los senadores republicanos tenían esta propuesta también en la legislación, no había disponibilidad política, no había voluntad política ni siquiera para debatir la propuesta. Entonces están tratando de bloquear y de alargar y politiquear el proceso lo más que puedan. Este senador Andrew Lang es del área de Olivia. Por esa área también hay trabajadores de la agricultura y también hay trabajadores del campo. Incluso nosotros tenemos muy buenos aliados allá en Olivia, que les mandamos un saludo si nos están escuchando. Entonces, lo que está usted escuchando es cómo se quieren, por motivaciones políticas, por motivaciones antiinmigrantes, cómo quieren alargar el proceso. Pero todas las enmiendas que está viendo que son antiinmigrantes están siendo rechazadas por la mayoría demócrata. Si se fijas, cada que se hace un voto son votos de 6-4. Los 4 son los republicanos, los 6 son los demócratas. Y tenemos los votos suficientes para pasar esta propuesta en el Comité de Transporte en el Senado. Lo que ahorita está viendo es el proceso de que se tiene que debatir, que se tiene que comentar y por ley es el derecho de cualquier miembro tratar de meter enmiendas. Y eso es lo que está escuchando ahorita. Seguimos en transmisión y le voy a traer más comentario en un rato más. Buenas tardes.
Those are, I guess, the ramifications of making that choice.
So I guess, Mr. Chair, the question would stand for the panel for either senator or the attorney sitting at the table. Without that information being shared to the Secretary of State's office, what's the safeguard to have a non-citizen vote?
Senator Champion.
Mr. Chair, maybe I'll take a stab at it.
Yep.
It is clear that it's not necessarily the driver's license itself that becomes a crime if you vote and you're not supposed to vote.
A
little closer to the microphone.
There we go. I've been telling everyone else to get closer to the mic than I was back. As you know, that is not, what is the crime is if you vote and you're not supposed to vote. It is not just the license itself. For an example, even though we are hoping to change this, if a person is a felon and they have a driver's license and they go present that license and they sign all the documents, it is signing the document saying that they're eligible to vote under Minnesota law. It is not. It's not just presenting the driver's license itself. So I don't want us to get derailed by the driver's license itself by saying possessing the driver's license is what is the crime. That's not the crime. And the representative from the agency has been very clear that I do not believe that anyone who is going to get a driver's license under this policy or provision wants to be deported, wants to do anything illegal, and so we just believe that the amendment as it is put forward, no matter how well intentioned, it is not the right thing to do. So we ask the committee not to adopt the amendment.
One more and I'll stop. Senator Champion, you're a good man, and I really am trying to be. I don't see a safeguard in any way, shape, or form in this bill, and I don't. You have a lot of faith in the folks getting these licenses, as do I, for good purposes. But we as a state of Minnesota are putting ourselves in a precarious situation, not just for voting. What's to stop somebody that has a DUI and wants that off their record to change their address, to change their name, to change their birth date, attest to it, get a new driver's license, and have a clean record? My picture could be the same. What's the safeguard on that? I mean, again, you don't share any information with the Department of Vehicle Services. You don't share any information with the Secretary of State's office, both of the agencies that you would hopefully would be the safeguards. But in the bill, it says specifically you're not going to do so. That's a danger, I think, to everybody, both sitting in the audience and at the table.
So, Mr. Chair,
Senator Champion.
your question is an interesting one, and I'm going to try to start here. We have a notion that's called integrity and trust, and we trust everyone who goes to the polls, that the folks who go to the polls and register are indeed eligible to vote. We do that. We do that, and we ask them to attest to it. We do that. Can I guarantee that everyone is going to do the right thing? No, that is why we have prisons. That's why we have different laws. That's why certain things happen. But we should not just conclude that because of this license and the folks who would be registering for this license is going to do the wrong thing. We must trust their humanity the way they trust our humanity. Let's also say this. There are 18 other states that do this. So there's been some trust along the way. There's been some models that show and demonstrate that this is okay to do. So Senator, I don't approach this with the glass half full, empty. I approach it with the glass half full, and that we can see the humanity and the opportunity that is presented here. And even if we have a concern around voting, it's misplaced here because we do believe that the individuals who will apply for this license has the integrity and they understand the ramifications and the consequences of their actions, and no one wants to be deported. No one wants to say, I did something that I'm not supposed to do. So that is what I would offer, and I would also offer that the committee not adopt this amendment.
Senator Jasinski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just kind of a following along those lines. So maybe to testify. So if I am in Minnesota to qualify to vote, I can show a driver's license, and that could be this Class D that we have, and check a box and say that I attest that I'm qualified to vote. And with those two things, can someone vote in Minnesota?
Ms. Freeman.
Yes, under current statute, the purpose of the driver's license currently and would remain if this bill was passed, the purpose of the driver's license would be to establish you are who you say you are and you live where you say you live. So your identity as well as your residency. And then the other attestations and the oath, again, are swearing to citizenship and that you're over the age of 18. And as Senator Champion mentioned, that you meet other requirements that are in that voter oath.
And Mr. Chair, just to follow up, so, and I know we live in Minnesota, nice, but looking at the newspapers every day, there is crime here in Minnesota. How many people have been taking our law of not doing this or of perjuring themselves? I mean, how many cases? Again, I don't see any happening here in Minnesota. So how many, if someone would go in either before this bill or after this bill, check the box saying I attest and show this driver's license, how many of those crimes are being prosecuted here in Minnesota in the past 5 years?
Ms. Freeman.
Chair and members, I don't know. I don't have that statistic with me. I'm happy to find out and follow up. If that statistic exists, those crimes would be charged at a county level. And so you could find that in court records. I don't have it off the top of my head though.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And again, just because again, this is probably the number one concern that I've heard about this bill is the concern of the voting and how it opens it up and it's degrading our system of what we have right now. And listening to you testifying, saying that, it further makes me concerned of what could be happening. And we all watch the news, and I think election integrity is something that is huge across our nation. It's huge. And I know 18 other states do this, but Senator Mohammed, do you know how many states do require either a comment of for driving privileges only or not for voting of the 18 states? And are there other states that do have raised concerns over our issues here and have implemented something that we're asking for?
Senator Mohammed.
Mr. Chair, Senator Jasinski, none of the other states, as far as I'm concerned, do require that. We also had this same exact law in place prior to 2003, and we haven't had any of these issues. All this bill does is allows people to drive freely and safely.
Senator Champion.
And Mr. Chair, and Senator Jasinski, at the risk of being redundant, I'm reminding everyone that when I brought this bill forward, none of my friends on the other side voted for it, even with that language. And even though time has changed, I get it. We understand that change. I don't want us to get hung up on that language and now use it as a way to say, here's what we would want to do and here's what we would want. Because what happened back then? We didn't want it back then. And I'm just saying, please vote no on the amendment.
Mr. Chair, one last follow-up.
Senator Jasinski.
So I did a Google search on the question I just asked, because they always say, don't ask a question you don't know some answers for. So doing that, 18 states, and one is not certain, but I believe it's either 9 or 10 of the states require what we're asking. 9 or 10 of the 18. California says there should be a recognizable feature between the two licenses. Colorado, the license shall state not valid for federal identification, voting, or public benefit purposes. Delaware, driving privilege card, a separate driver's license. District of Columbia, some marked feature. Illinois cannot be used as a proof of identity and must state temporary driver's license. Maryland, the license must have a design or color distinguishable from other driver's licenses. Let me see the next one. Nevada must have a distinguishing mark. New Jersey, the law creates 2 types of driver's licenses. Actually, in New Mexico, they require individual tax identification. Rhode Island, same thing, must have that Utah distinguishable feature. So obviously, there's a concern across the nation, what we're asking for here this evening. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Senator Howe.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I just want to go back and a lot of those states have provisional ballots. We're one of 3 that does not have provisional ballots. And I think the provisional ballots thing would clear up a lot of discussion on this. But I'm gonna tell you what happened to my constituent. My constituent that went through this process, she had a permanent green card. She was convinced by some of her coworkers that because she had that permanent green card, she could vote. Her husband served with me in the military. He said, well, I don't think so, but we'll go and we can see if we can register you. She filled out the card. She had a driver's license, which was her first piece of identification for same-day registration. She filled out the card, but there was a line. Election judges get in a rush when they're taking that. And in 2016, she was eligible. She was allowed to vote. 2018, she voted. Then she retired. They both retired. Decided, you know what, they're going to travel. They decided that it would be easier to travel if they had citizenship, if she had citizenship. So she applied for citizenship. That was her mistake. She could have voted the rest of her life because she filled out the card, got registered to vote. If she would have stayed in that precinct, she could have voted the rest of her life. What happened was she applied for citizenship. They came in and said, you voted twice, you committed 2 felonies. We're going to deport you back to the country where you haven't seen in 35 years. So myself and Congressman Emmer had to write a bunch of letters The only thing that saved her from being deported, and that's what I'm concerned about. I believe that we're setting folks up for failure and deportation if we don't do something to help them stay out of trouble. So the only thing that saved her, they went back and found her voter registration card, and she checked that she wasn't a citizen. That's the only reason she's still in this country. So what I'm saying, we got to put something in place to help people not make the same mistake she made and possibly get deported back to a country where she hasn't seen in 35 years. And that's my concern. If we had provisional ballots, we could fix some of that. We have no safeguards in place in any of our laws to prevent that from happening. That's my concern. I don't want to see people sent back to a country where they haven't been in decades. Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Senator Champion.
In the analogy that has been given, two things are highlighted, if not more than two things in your example. One, she answered honestly. Two, there's always a need for education and to talk more to individuals, and there would be no shortage of conversations that would happen. And so, three, you highlight the high consequence for someone not doing something. But we understand that she didn't have any criminal intent. And that would also mean that we have to do more with election judges. So if someone looks at that document and if they had seen that she checked that, then they should have also been the one to say to the person in your example, you can't vote because you're not eligible. So it is not the driver's license because she did everything right. She presented something, even though she was under an impression, but she answered honestly. But I'm not going to go back and forth with you, Senator. Thank you so very much. I appreciate your story.
Mr. Chair, I think Senator Bobby Joe Champion already said the same thing.
All right, thank you. Senator Coleman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Before I forget, I'd like to request a roll call, please. There's been a lot of discussion about trust and the right thing to do, and I think everyone here is trying to do the right thing, Senator. I think that's very subjective, and I trust the people that are applying for these driver's license. I also trust my neighbors, but I lock my door at night. And the purpose here is to put in those safeguards regardless of the level of trust. And that's the purpose of this amendment. This seems like a common sense amendment that I would hope would be bipartisan in nature. That's already being done in several states, we just learned, across the country. And so it is my sincere hope that this is given careful consideration and thought. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything further, members? Senator Coleman renews the motion on the A25 amendment. A roll call has been requested. The clerk will take the roll.
Chair Dibble,
No.
Vice Chair Morrison,
No.
Senator Jasinski,
Aye.
Senator Carlson,
No.
Senator Coleman,
Aye.
Senator Herr,
No.
Senator Howe,
Aye.
Senator Lang,
Aye.
Senator McEwen,
No.
Senator Port,
No.
With 4 votes voting yes, with 6 voting no, the A25 is not adopted. Members.
Mr. Chair.
Senator Jasinski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to offer the A23 amendment.
Senator Jasinski offers the A23 amendment. It is in our packets. Senator Jasinski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And again, we've had great testimony, a lot of testifiers, and everything that I heard about the concern is they wanted driver's licenses to get to work. That was the main concern, so they can make money, drive to work or drive to the hospital or bring their kids to school, whatever it is. So again, this is just following on Senator Coleman's amendment, just to make sure, again, as I think 9 out of 18 states do something very similar to this, put driving privileges only on the driver's license. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I request a roll call.
Thank you. A roll call has been requested. Roll call granted. Members, anything further? All right. I think we've had a fairly thorough discussion of this subject. So I'll just go right to a vote if that's all right. The clerk will take the roll.
Chair Dibble,
No.
Vice Chair Morrison,
No.
Senator Jasinski,
Aye.
Senator Carlson,
No.
Senator Coleman,
Aye.
Senator Herr,
No.
Senator Howe,
Aye.
Senator Lang,
Aye.
Senator McEwen,
No.
Senator Port,
No.
With 4 voting yes and 6 voting no, the A23 is not adopted. Members,
Mr. Chair.
Senator Howe.
Thank you, Chair Dibble. And, we've had a lot of discussion here about the voting. And that's a high priority for a lot of folks. It's not my top priority. I'll tell you what my top priority is later. We'll have that discussion. But right now, with all the discussion about voting, and I figure that now is the time to bring this amendment. And it's basically bringing back last year's voter ID bill. So, Mr. Chair, I offer the A15 amendment.
Senator Howe offers the A15 amendment.
And Mr.
Go ahead
Chair,
and
as
explain
that's
it.
been handed out, I'm just going to go through the main points of the amendment because it's a lot of pages and I don't expect you to grasp it all. So the main point is the voter ID rule promises that every single Minnesotan who wants to vote in an election will be counted and protected. Recent polling shows that 75% of Americans and 69% of Minnesotans support the requirement to show some form of photo ID before casting a ballot to ensure you are who you say you are at the polls. Providing a state ID for the purposes of voting to anyone who's eligible for free ensures that there's no cost barriers or poll taxes. In addition, the bill covers the cost of obtaining the necessary documents to apply for a state ID, removing the additional cost barriers. Minnesota has had a long-standing tradition of same-day registration that will not be affected by this bill. In fact, voter ID strengthens the same-day registration by the process by allowing those who, without proper ID, to vote using a provisional ballot, verify their eligibility, and still be counted. Provisional ballot is used in all but 3 states, making a common sense reform to build trust in the balloting process and the election results. Provisional balloting as part of the voter ID will also allow students, nursing home residents, and others in residential facilities to cast a vote via provisional ballot if they are eligible at their current residence, rather than via absentee ballot for a home address. In the landmark U.S. Supreme Court case Crawford versus Marion County, the court held that an Indiana law requiring a photo ID to vote did not violate the U.S. Constitution. The court said there are legitimate state interests in voting laws requiring photo ID, including deterring, detecting, and preventing voter fraud, improving and modernizing election procedures, and perhaps most importantly, safeguarding voter confidence in elections. My point is if we get this in place, I think I won't have to worry about any more of my constituents getting threatened with deportation just because they thought they were eligible to vote. And I think that's what I'm trying to do is I don't want to have to try and talk to INS and the immigration folks any longer to try and keep one of my constituents in my district because they made a mistake and thought they could vote. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Howe. Members, any response to the A15? I will respond by saying, I think this is a matter for the Elections Committee. I think Senator Carlson would agree. Senator Mohammed, did you want to provide a quick response to the A15?
Mr. Chair, Senator Howe, I agree with Chair Dibble that this, I think, is a bill for the Elections Committee. This Senate File 27 allows everyone in our state to drive, and we're restoring a right we already had. It has nothing to do with voting. We're just reinstating everybody in our state to be able to drive legally, safely, and freely. Also, voters rejected voter ID preferred back in 2012.
All right.
So I ask members to vote no.
All right. Senator Carlson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We've talked about this over and over and over. Voter ID primarily is related to voter impersonation, which we don't have. We have also had a statewide ballot vote on this, and it was turned down rather significantly. The federal elections, I don't remember what the initials are, but the FEC has stated that the Minnesota same-day registration plan is acceptable and allows us to not be required to have any provisional ballots. We also know that provisional ballots are not counted at the time of counting all other ballots, and they need to be cured by some other method. And that method has been where the person has to contact their county or the county has to contact the person, and it leads to votes not being counted, and it could be up to 25% of those provisional ballots. We have talked about this, about the confidence in voting, and I'm going to say something here that I've really come to believe, and that is that we have had people who say that they don't have confidence in voting. We have had a president that has tried to convince the public with a big lie that you can't count on mail-in ballots, that you can't count on Dominion machines, you can't count on a lot of things that we do count on, and that all of those have been subjected to lawsuits and have been turned aside. So when we bring it up in the Elections Committee, that's what I'll say again, and we'll probably have more background. We could ask the Secretary of State to come and verify those things. But what we have done is we have had people in these positions, in these seats, say that they don't trust elections, and their constituents are repeating back to them what they've told them. My constituents believe that we have had a fair election. My constituents, we've had a major turnout in voting in the last election. People have confidence in our elections. They don't think we need to put people through excessive amounts of jumping through hoops to get their ballot counted. I want to see all ballots from voters, that's legitimate voters, eligible voters, counted. We do have stats on those numbers of people that have been charged and even convicted, and in some cases their charges have been pled down, because what Senator Champion said is that you have to be intending to commit a felony before you can be convicted of committing a felony. So we have a lot to say here that is not just being said. And I really think that what we need to do is we need to have people say, hey, we've got a good election system. We've got a good mail-in voter system. Many of our rural members get elected by mail-in ballots. You can look at the Secretary of State's listing and see whether your precinct, whether your county, whether your municipality can use mail-in balloting. And if it's that not trustworthy, then maybe we need to redo your election in Greater Minnesota. It can't be done in my district because I'm in the 7-county area that does not allow mail-in balloting for any precinct that's under 400 voters. So my people trust mail-in balloting and they want it. We have been asked for it over and over again. And I think sometimes what we need to do is we need to stop going back to this, that we don't have confidence in our voting, because we do. Minnesota does. And we have had the last election where people have come to us and said, we want to save democracy. We want you to be able to count the ballots. We trust you to count the ballots. So I think that we need to admit that the President of the United States has been elected, and by a fair election. We have fair and honest elections in Minnesota, and we need to stick to that. And we need to if there's anything that needs to be fixed, let's fix it. But let's just not invent things, and let's just not try to pass on misinformation that gets put into the media and other places that distracts what we need to do in this state to make sure that we get an honest vote forever. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Carlson. Senator Howe.
Thank you, Chair Dibble and Senator Carlson. My emphasis on the provisional ballots is to try to catch the mistake of maybe a few election judges who are pressed for time because of the same day registration and the lines out the door. And they make a mistake by not catching that the person checked the box that they weren't a citizen, which almost cost my constituent to be deported for 35 years. So if we can put a safety valve in that piece, so I don't lose
y con los que hacemos este
to a
trabajo.
mistake by an
Y el
election
senador
judge,
está
isn't that making the system better? But
cosas
that's fine. We won't have that discussion here. I'll just ask for a roll call, Mr. Chair.
A roll call has been requested.
y el
on the
señor que habló
815.
antes,
Senator Carlson.
Mr. Chair, that comment has to be.
ese señor estaba
How long
diciendo
and how
que
many
tenemos que
times
dejar
did you
ese senador,
know
ese
a
senador
felony
usted ve,
being committed by
es
a
un
voter?
aliado
You said it was a
súper
felony. How many times did you know that that person was committing a felony and didn't report it to to your county? Because that's a felony. If you think it's a felony, it is. Now I think Senator Champion said, no, that wasn't a felony because it was an error. It was a mistake. The person didn't know they were making that mistake. So that isn't a felony that earns deportation.
All right. Let's go to
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Chair. Anything further? All right. On the A15, please take the roll.
Chair Dibble,
No.
Vice Chair Morrison,
No.
Senator Jasinski,
Aye.
Senator Carlson,
No.
Senator Coleman,
Aye.
Senator Herr,
No.
Senator Howe,
Aye.
Senator Lang,
Aye.
Senator McEwen,
No.
Senator Port,
No.
With 4 votes with 4 voting yes and 6 voting no, the A15 is not adopted. Members, any more discussion, questions, or amendments? Senator Lang.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I believe this one was one of the publicly posted ones ahead of time, A21.
And the number?
21.
Oh, sorry. Senator Lang offers the A21 amendment. Senator Lang.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And the A21 amendment speaks directly to time frame. This is we are, I think, and there's been several amendments that today have talked about being here legally and the desire to be here legally. And I think that is, hopefully, I trust that a lot of people within the state of Minnesota that are undocumented would love to be here legally. So I guess this is, let's do this temporary. Let's offer incentive to go down that route. I would love to have done so financially, but this is it puts a let's see what it was again, 2 years. 2-year expiration policy or period, and then only 4 renewals. And that's largely the bill or the amendment as a whole. And I guess I would ask, and this is maybe an immigration policy lawyer type question, sorry, I'll make sure you're paying attention before I ask it. How long does average immigration process actually take? And actually, before you answer that, how much does it cost as well?
Zaya.
Chair Dibble, Senator Lang, thank you for the question. With regard to the time, it can take, frankly, decades for some folks. For example, actually, my family hails from India. For certain relatives of Indian U.S. citizens, they can wait over 15 years for a green card, and then after you get that green card, you would be getting a citizenship that would take another 5 years. So you're talking about 20 years. So that's just one example. As far as the cost goes, those are significant. It's in the thousands of dollars just for the application. But as you are aware, the process is extremely complicated. So folks oftentimes need to get an attorney to go through that process. So that can be even more money that needs to be invested in order to obtain status in a country that for most folks, they consider their home and is their home.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And in addition to that, I know that the timeframes with refugees and or those folks seeking political asylum is rather truncated in comparison. Could you speak to that?
Ms. Iyer.
I can. With regard to both refugees and asylees are folks who fear persecution in their home countries, and that's why they come to the United States. The difference is that refugees are designated with that status outside of the country. Asylees apply for it here. When you're talking about somebody who's a refugee, once they get to the United States, they come here with refugee status. A year later, they're able to obtain a green card, and then that time counts toward the time that they can get citizenship, and a couple of years later, they can apply for citizenship. For asylees, that's actually the same period once they get asylum status, but the problem is that time to get asylum, unfortunately, takes a very long time right now because of the time to adjudicate. There's just simply not enough people that are designated in order to hear those cases.
Senator Lang.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was going to ask another question. I totally lost my train of thought trying to listen to the testifier, but I've had many experiences actually over the last, since taking this seat with friends and individuals that have had immigration issues. Actually from European countries, believe it or not, has been the biggest issue. That being said, so while you are seeking asylum, while you are a political refugee, while you are a immigrant trying to immigrate legally, is there a driver's license?
Ms. Iyer.
Or anybody?
At this time, for certain classes of folks, there is a driver's license for people who do not have, for example, lawful permanent residence. When you're talking about someone who's, I'm just thinking through them, if you're talking about somebody who's a refugee, they already have that status, and so they're able to get a driver's license that way. If you're talking about someone who is an asylum seeker, someone who already has asylum, they are also able to get a driver's license.
Just one more, and then I'll be quiet again. You sparked a thought. So there is provisional driver's license for asylum seekers, refugees, and legal immigrants. Now, the question I was going to ask is, when you mentioned people that did not get those, I'm unaware of anybody that doesn't get one. Could you elaborate?
So,
Ms. Iyer.
So Senator Dibble, Senator Lang, I think they don't get a, first I want to just start by saying that if you're a refugee or you have obtained asylum, you are going to get a driver's license because you're just getting the normal driver's license. That's not provisional, anything like that. It's just, those folks are eligible for driver's licenses right now. What I was talking about were asylum seekers, and that is that I just have to look it up. It's just somebody who's in the process of getting asylum, but has not actually gotten that status yet. That is the group of people that I just need to look up very quickly and be able to share that information.
But the central point is that people who are not citizens but have legal presence can get driver's license, including a real ID.
Correct,
They
they can.
just simply cannot. So they can get the non-compliant driver's license. They can get a real ID. They just cannot obtain an enhanced driver's license, which is used, of course, to establish citizenship for the purpose of crossing the border at the surface. So something I think we forget sometimes in this discussion, that people who are not citizens of this country do have the ability to obtain a driver's license and Minnesota ID.
So, Mr. Chair, to the point of the amendment, sorry that took so long to come full circle. The point of the amendment, the time frame and the limitation on the time frame and the application process a couple different times. That is to provide opportunity to the folks we're talking about, the non-documented people, hopefully that would pursue the route of being here legally, being tax-paying citizens, being fully recognized in every way possible. This amendment would provide an opportunity, that window. Thank you.
Right. Thank you. Anything further, members? All right. Senator Lang renews the A21. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no? No. The motion does not prevail. The A21 is not adopted. Members, anything further?
Mr. Chair.
Senator Howe.
I'd like to offer the A38 amendment.
A38?
Yes.
Senator Howe offers the A38 amendment. As it comes around, Senator?
Members, a similar amendment was actually taken up by the other body and actually accepted. So what this does is it allows the sharing of data when someone, it requires the commissioner or the driver's license agent to record whether U.S. citizenship or lawful presence in the U.S. was demonstrated, and if so, which documents were provided. So I think if you have been, or if you do have legal citizenship, I think it's common sense to provide that to the Secretary of State's office. So that's basically what this does. And it improves the accuracy of our voter registration records. And I think it's just a common sense amendment. So that's basically what the amendment does, and I ask for your support and stand for any questions.
Thank you, Senator Howe. To the A38 amendment, I'll let the author confer for a moment.
And Mr. Chair, this was accepted in the House, so it is in the House language. I know, okay,
that's
the other
the House.
body, whatever.
You're moving backwards, Senator Howe.
Well.
Senator Champion.
Mr. Chair, it is my understanding that the lines 1.8 to 1.0 was adopted in the House, but everything else above that line was not a part of the amendment. But perhaps our testifier can confirm that.
Ms. Iyer.
Chair Dibble, that is correct. 1.8 through 1.10, a version of that, I'm not sure if it's the exact language, but something to that effect was indeed adopted into the into one of the amendments and is in the last engrossment of the House bill. The portions above between 1.1 to 1. At least 1.5 and I think 1.6 as well. Were not a part of the amendment that was adopted.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Howe.
Thank you, Chair Dibble, and that is correct. But when we looked through that, we believe that language up above was was needed in order to make that on 1.8 and 1.10 to actually happen. Because if you don't have this information up on the top, that information on the bottom cannot occur. So in order to make it work, we added the elements to make the whole thing actually function. Otherwise, it's not going to happen. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Senator Champion.
after consulting with my folks here at the table, we would hope that maybe the committee would divide the amendment, maybe adopt or consider adopting lines 1.8 to 1.10 and not adopting the lines 1.2 to 1.6.
Senator, so Senator Howe.
Thank you, Chair Dibble. The only concern I have, Senator Champion, is I don't know how you collect and provide that information on 1.8 to 1.10 if you don't do the 1.2 to 1.6. I mean, if you don't ask those questions and gather that data, how is it going to be transferred? And that's the only reason we put those questions in there. If you don't ask the question, how do you have the information to transfer? And that's the only reason it's in there. I would hope that that's a common sense place, and I know we don't deal with that a lot here.
Mr. Chair.
Senator Champion.
And Senator, I'm certain that Senator Mohammed will look at it and decide later if that language is in fact needed. She wants to keep the bill as consistent with what the House has up to this particular point. So we would ask the committee to handle this amendment or the A38 amendment consistent with what I've articulated already, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair.
Senator Howe.
Thank you, Chair Dibble. I will just pull the amendment, and you can have an opportunity to look at, and we'll bring it back at a later time. Thank you.
Senator Howe withdraws the A38 amendments. Members, anything further? Senator Jasinski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'll skip through one of my amendments, but I'll go to the next one. I offer the A24 amendment.
Senator Jasinski offers the A24. Members, that's in your packets.
And Mr. Chair, just to explain it, so again, a lot of concerns in my district of the services that are required and the money we spend on services. And so my question is, do we know if this new compliant card Class D license will qualify non-documented people for social services, financial support? So this would basically be a line on the back that says it does not qualify for benefits. That's the intent of the bill. I don't need to go through all of it in the essence of time, but that's basically what it says. It would be not for benefits, and it'll be printed on the back of the card, not fully visible on the front, but just on the back of the card. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Senator Mohammed to the A24.
Mr. Chair, Senator Jasinski, I ask for no vote on this amendment because we don't want any markings on the ID. We want it to be the same bill or the same ID that we had prior to 2003, and we want it to have no markings so that everybody in our state can have similar exact IDs without them being identified as undocumented or not undocumented.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So my question then is for someone, I don't know if it's staff or who it is, would this qualify, would this card, if approved, would this qualify undocumented residents for financial support services?
We do have someone from Human Services here who could respond. Welcome to the committee. Please identify yourself and respond.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Matt Burdick, Director of State Government Relations with the Department of Human Services. And I apologize, Senator, if you could please repeat the question.
Senator Jasinski, if you could please repeat the question.
Thank you, Mr.
And
Chair.
Mr. Burdick, if you could come close to the microphone. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So my question is, if this bill is approved and the Class D driver's licenses is approved for undocumented citizens, if they brought this card in to social services and needed to qualify for benefits, would this card allow them to qualify for financial benefits through our counties, county welfare programs?
Mr. Burdick.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator, no, they will not. We have a pretty robust verification process for all of our public assistance benefits, and a driver's license is not sufficient to identify someone as being eligible. In addition, we do verify citizenship status. Just because someone is not a citizen does not necessarily disqualify them. It really depends on their unique immigration status, and that all needs to be verified through a pretty robust process by our county partners, oftentimes using federal databases to verify that information.
Right. Anything further, members? All right, Senator Jasinski renews his motion on the A24 amendment. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. No.
No.
The motion does not prevail. The A24 is not adopted. Members, anything further? Senator Howe.
Chair Dibble, I'd like to offer the A13 amendment. And members, I guess I would ask Senator Mohammed, when you drafted this bill, did you take the time to read the sonar for the ruling in 2003 that changed the driver's license piece?
In case Senator Mohammed doesn't not know what a sonar is, that's a statement of need and reasonableness, which is kind of the analysis that is done by an agency prior to the adoption of rules.
Mr.
So
Chair,
Senator Mohammed, did you read the sonar?
Mr. Chair, Senator Howell, I have not yet.
Well, and I think,
Senator Howell.
Dibble.
Senator Howell.
Thank you, Chair Dibble. And Mike, I guess the concern is I think a lot of folks here have not read that sonar. And basically the sonar, the statement of needs and reasonableness, basically laid out the reason why in 2003 that change was made. Keep in mind and the reason it was made was because of the availability of the terrorists that attacked our nation in 9/11 actually got driver's licenses in places where they could and used those documents to further their availability to get bank accounts so they could finance their operations. They were able to get flight lessons, establish themselves, and it's a premier, it's our first step document for identification. In 9/11, those terrorists, those 19 of them had over 30 driver's license and IDs on them at the time when they did this. So members, this is my main concern. Everyone else is talking about voting, and I know I brought the voter ID bill, but my main concern is the security of our nation and to make sure that we don't have and we don't open ourselves up to another 9/11 occurrence. And because just last year, there was, I believe, let me look and so I don't misstate it. In fiscal year 2022, 98 individuals on the terrorist watch list were encountered on the southern border between our ports of entry. That's a huge concern, folks. And so asking for some way to actually share this data so we can actually ensure that we're not letting terrorists into our nation, I think is common sense. So that's why the amendment deletes Article 2. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Howell. Senator Champion or Mohammed?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We're asking the committee to vote no on the A13 amendment. we recognize that since we had the terrorist attack, there's been a number of safeguards put in place that were a little different some time ago. And so it's fair to say that we've learned that there should be additional documentation and other verifications and all the things that are important for the verifications in this case or in this matter is being considered and also will be a part of this robust discussion. So, so we ask that you vote no on the 813 amendment that deletes Article 13, which is the data provisions.
Chair Dibble. Thank you. Can you, when you, Senator Champion and Senator Mohammed, where in this document, where in this bill does it provide those safeguards that you just mentioned? Can you show me where the lines are where that information exists?
Senator Champion.
Mr. Chair and Senator, you had a person from the department who came up who talked about their collaboration with allies and federal government and all the other verifications that they will walk through in order to make sure that we do not have any real challenges. So Senator, it's not just one thing, it's a collection of information, and there's a number of paces that the department will go through, and you heard that testimony already from the department. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Howe.
Thank you, Chair Dibble. So Senator Champion, they check the terrorist watch list and they check and make sure that none of those folks are on that list. Is that what I'm just being told?
Mr. Chair, and
Champion.
to the senator, that's a question you would have to ask the department. Unfortunately, I'm not one who deals with the ministerial duties of making sure that the paces are covered in order to make sure that we have the right folks getting the information. But what I can say is that based on the testimony that I heard earlier today, the department is prepared and clear about all the paces that they have to take in order to make sure that information is not just legitimate, but verifiable. And if you want to call up the department, I'm sure the chair can and will do that.
Senator Howe.
Chair Dibble, I'll take that as a no and I'll ask for a roll call.
Roll call has been requested. Senator Lang.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Champion, we had a department that just sat up here and said that they don't have a program in place yet. They're working on training. They're working on things. Regardless of whether you use the word robust, that system doesn't exist yet. In fact, your bill does the opposite to say that we won't even provide that information to another department. To say that it's a robust system is simply untrue.
Mr. Chair,
Senator Champion.
Senator, I'm not quite sure, Senator, what information that you're using to extract from my statements around the notion of verification. The department said that they have a number of training that happens, strengthen their relationship with their partners, federal and all across the board in order to make sure that they can go through the paces necessary. That's what I heard. I didn't hear them suggest that they're going to do nothing. The whole reason why they're asking for additional resources to really make sure that they can do the work that is necessary. In fact, we've had some amendments that were put forth today to undermine what staffing levels are needed in order to make sure that they're able to do this work. So we're confident in the department's ability to do the work. And if you have any additional questions about the paces the department will take, I would just ask that you direct those questions to the agency. But based on what I heard them say, they talked about the paces and timing. And in fact, they said, if this bill goes by slower than anticipated, they would want more time to make sure that they can do the things that's necessary. So thank you, Mr. Chair. We ask that you vote no on the 813 amendment.
All right. Anything further? Yes. Any further members? Senator. All right. A roll call has been requested on the Howe A13 amendment. The clerk will take the roll.
Chair Dibble?
No.
Vice Chair Morrison?
No.
Senator Jasinski?
Aye.
Senator Carlson?
No.
Senator Coleman,
Aye.
Senator Herr,
No.
Senator Howe,
Aye.
Senator Lang,
Aye.
Senator McEwen,
No.
Senator Port,
No.
With 4 voting yes and 6 voting no, the A13 amendment is not adopted. Members. Senator Lang.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have the
Senator Lang offers the A12. You want to explain that, Senator Lang, as it's coming around?
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right.
I think it goes to maybe the draft of this amendment. This was I didn't have as much input on it as I thought I was going to. So the oral amendment would be to strike everything on line 1.8, starting with the and then the other down.
All right, so Senator Lang offers the A12 amendment with the oral amendment striking the last sentence, basically, starting on line 8. Senator Lang. Do we need to vote on it? Yeah, we'll just incorporate that. All right.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair.
We'll ask Senator Lang to briefly speak to his amendment, and then we'll
Thank
call
you.
on you, Senator Champion.
So again, back to the data collection. That's exactly what this amendment does. It goes to the data collection with the sharing of data. To be honest, Senator Champion, the bill. It simply allows that data to be provided to law enforcement agencies. Like the rest of us in the state, we have a license out there that gets shared with law enforcement agencies. I agree with you that I don't think there should be a second class license, but it sure shouldn't be an A+ license. You get the freedom to not have that.
Senator Lang, can you speak up a little bit? Thanks. No.
I said something so poignant too. Apologize. I'm sorry. So Senator Mohammed, I'll just repeat what I kind of said. I don't know if you heard what I said, that I agree that this should not be a second class license, but it should be a license much like that with the rest of the people that live in the state of Minnesota, which their information when it comes to law enforcement should be shared, should be documented.
Senator Mohammed or Senator Champion? Response to the A12.
Mr. Chair, thank you so much for the opportunity to speak. We ask that the committee reject the A12 amendment. A part of it is we want anyone who applies for license under this provision is treated equally and fairly. We don't send all that data unless someone can tell me differently. Every time I apply for a license, whether that goes through ICE, because ICE is a form of law enforcement. We should not be doing the work of the federal government. They have the ability to do their own work. And we should not attempt to get into the patrolling business, which is what I think that this A12 amendment does, with all due respect. Unless the senator is able to verify for me that when he goes to apply for a license, that there is that this data is collected and then is on a monthly basis. It goes to the United States Department of Homeland Security, Immigration and Customs Enforcement. It is my understanding that it doesn't.
Senator Lang.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So again, took that out of the amendment. So what I'm more concerned, took that out of the amendment. So we're not talking about ICE. What I'm talking about is when I get pulled over, how does my information get shared with the judicial branch when I'm doing 110 miles an hour in a 55? and I have to go to court, not that I've done that, and I have to go to court, how is my information shared?
Mr. Chair,
Senator Champion.
it is my understanding that law enforcement, like for me, would look at, my license and see what's there. And if something pings, let's say that I have a warrant, but they're not going to go through customs in order to make sure that I am a citizen. The very moment when you go over into the notion of citizenship and immigration, that is where I believe that this A12 amendment goes awry, because then you have a group of people that you're treating differently than someone else who has a similar driver's license.
Senator Lang.
Mr. Chair, I think you're missing my point, Senator Champion. The way your bill reads is that you do not share information with law enforcement, correct?
Senator Champion.
Mr. Chair, Senator Lang, that is correct, because right now to this day, we don't share information with ICE if
Not ICE.
any other person gets pulled over.
Sorry, Mr. Chair.
Senator Lang.
Not ICE, Minnesota State Patrol. That's what I'm talking about.
Well, here in your,
Senator Champion.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to speak over you without going through the chair. I'm sorry.
You're good.
Mr. Chair, here, when you look at your amendment, it clearly says the commissioner must provide data collected pursuant to this section on a monthly basis to the United States Department of Homeland Security, Immigration and Customs Enforcement.
Oh, Senator Champion, we deleted that sentence.
Oh, you did. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Mr.
Well,
Chair.
but if you deleted that, did you delete the 1.6? Well, the language on 1.7 where it says must be provided to any requesting law enforcement agency?
Senator Champion, that language remains.
I'm sorry.
That language remains.
And so if that language remains, then that includes ICE. ICE is a law enforcement agency. And so simply having that language there would still do the very thing that we are saying should not be done, because it includes, but not limited to, ICE. That's my understanding, and I can stand corrected if Senate Council believes that I'm reading that incorrectly.
Senator Champion, Senate Council says she is not sure at this time the answer to your question.
So then that, Mr. Chair,
Senator Champion.
is more of a reason for us to reject the A12 amendment. And if there's something else that needs to be considered, judiciary would be the appropriate place or space by which to do that.
And I would suggest this is a rich discussion appropriate for judiciary. Senator Lang.
I think I need to clear the air.
Yes.
I think we need to talk about, I'm talking state law enforcement, whether it be the State Patrol, Minneapolis PD, I don't know, the DNR, whatever it may be. The question remains, if your bill passes, can they have information shared with them?
Senator Lang, to be clear, information about someone's citizenship status.
Right.
So,
Senator Champion.
Mr. Chair, it is my understanding that we are asking for no information to be shared with ICE or a like organization. Like Senate Council, I think that this A12 amendment needs a little more work and clarification. So at this moment, or at this time, we're asking the committee to vote no on the A12 amendment, and I'm certain that the great Senator Muhammad will think about it and decide if she wants to do something or not with it. Mr. Chair.
All right. So you want to go to?
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair.
Oh, Ms. Iyer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Lang. I'm hopeful that I can share a little bit more about the bill and the intention that may answer your question. There are two aspects of this bill that to your question, will law enforcement be able to get information after this bill passes? And the answer is yes, they will get the information they need in order to enforce the laws that are actually under their jurisdiction. So what's critical is, for example, you talked about just local law enforcement. They are enforcing state law local laws, not federal immigration law. They'll be able to get the information they need for that. For example, the data, about somebody's driver's license, et cetera, but they wouldn't be getting information that is demonstrating United States citizenship or lawful presence in the United States. Those aren't relevant factors or information to whether somebody has violated a state or local law. And I think that's true for other state enforcement agencies as well.
Senator Lang.
Sorry, Mr. Chair. That's incorrect. Line 10.19 on page 10 of your bill. There's a whole paragraph there. Other than the division of the department that administers driver's license, a driver's license agent must not share or disseminate any data on individuals indicating otherwise or having the effect of identifying whether or not an individual has demonstrated United States citizenship or demonstrated lawful presence in the United States. Right?
That's what I said.
So, yeah, Senator Lang, that's exactly what Ms. Ayers said.
Yeah, she said.
She said that,
Okay.
she said that.
Sorry, I wasn't listening that closely.
that law enforcement would get the information they need to enforce the laws that they are responsible for enforcing, in those instances where, law enforcement rarely, if ever, needs to know the status, the citizenship status of an individual.
The law enforcement does not need to know whether I'm a citizen or not. Not that I ever speed, but if I did.
So,
But the Secretary of State does.
That is something that is addressed, I think, by the. Just one moment. With regard to the Secretary of State, that is addressed in the House version of, sorry, Senator Dibble, Senator Lang, that is addressed in the House version of the bill, and in the amendment that was pulled, I think, by Senator Howe with regard to 838, those lines 1.8 through 1.10 do address those issues. I think it's just something that folks were going to take up after this, but it is in the House, the latest House engrossment.
all right, so we have the A12 amendments amended by the oral amendments, so with the deletion of that final sentence in front of us. All in favor, anything further? All in favor of the A12, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. No.
No.
The motion does not prevail. The A12 is not adopted. Anything further, members?
Mr. Chair,
Senator Brzezinski.
of the A37 amendment. Someone will get that out.
37.
And Senator Brzezinski, please proceed with their explanation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And again, doing a little research and doing some Google searches to prepare, and I ran across the 18 states, and the 9 or 10 of them require something on there. So one of them that came across, I think our intent here is to get people to be able to work and drive to work if they're here illegally. And several other states have made the recommendation to show proof of having filed an income tax return in that state. And Mr. Chair, I've done a few things wrong in my past, and I've been told that a driver's license is a privilege, not a right. So by showing that you're paying taxes, income taxes, I think that would be a good qualifying right or item to do. So with that, the A37.
So Senator Brzezinski offers the A37 requiring documentation of showing income taxes filed in the previous 2 years.
Mr.
Senator
Chair?
Champion, Senator Mohammed.
We asked the committee to not adopt the 837 amendment. Again, this is not something that we require of other individuals who are seeking a driver's license. We do not ask them to provide documentation or verification that they filed income tax return for the 2 most recent tax filing years. Not to mention you get into some other issues because some people may have gotten an extension, or there's a number of different reasons why someone may not have filed taxes. So, and it's not something that we ask. So, Mr. Chair and committee, please reject the A37 amendment.
Anything further, members?
And again, Mr. Chair, so again, listening to what I have since I've been driving, a driving license is a privilege here in Minnesota. So we want to give driver's licenses to people that want to work in here, but because they're not U.S. citizens, I think asking one thing to do to make them, to give them that privilege would be pay taxes, get employed, and contributing to taxes across the state, which obviously you well know does our budget here across the state and provides funding for us to do lots of things here in Minnesota. You know, pave roads, build roads, keep up our colleges, all those things that are going into our tax thing. I think again, and a driver's license is a privilege, not a right. So I think this is something that would show good diligence here to make the bill better.
All right. Anything further, members? Senator Jasinski renews his motion to pass the A37 amendment. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. No. The A37 is not adopted. Members, anything further?
Mr. Chair,
Senator Jasinski.
I have the A36 amendment.
Senator Jasinski offers the A36 amendment.
And Mr. Chair, I think looking at from a fiscal note, I know we've had some concerns with the driver vehicle services account and where the balances are. So this money or this amendment makes the money come from the driver rather than the vehicle services account or from the general fund. So if fiscal staff wants to go over that on the A36 amendment, explain, please.
Ms. Boyd.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry. Mr. Chair, this is an amendment to the A6 amendment that was adopted last week, which contained an appropriation from the Vehicle Services Operating Account. This amendment would keep the same totals to the same places for the same purposes and would just change the.
Ms. Boyd, can you speak a little
Oh,
closer?
I'm sorry. It would change the source of the appropriation to the general fund rather than the Vehicle Services Operating Account.
Senator Mohammed or Champion? Do we care about the color of the money? Or Deputy Commissioner
Mr.
Hearn
Chair.
is making her, she's moving the other
Mr.
direction.
Chair, we are asking for the source of the money at this particular time to remain as articulated. Senator Mohammed and I will always continue to look at whether there is some advantageous reason to do a different account. But at this time, we are asking the committee to not adopt the 836 amendment.
And Mr. Chair, I know you've been on the transportation way longer than I have, but I know we've heard from DVS several times about how that account is running low and they're concerned about depleting that account. So I think this is something that would help them so they will not come back and be concerned over that fund being depleted.
Mr. Chair,
Senator Champion.
if I could also give some additional clarification, because my chief author indicated to me that initially there was some discussion about using this account, but then at the advice of DPS and DVS, this was selected, what you see now as the better source to get the revenue. So we are asking the committee to not adopt the 836 amendment, but with the commitment that we will continue to have those conversations in the event that something has changed about which source of money is better than another.
And thank you, Senator Champion. Thank you for the amendments, Senator Jasinski. Appreciate it. Believe me, this is a very stressed fund. Oftentimes, we have that conversation in the context of the deputy registrars. I will remind us, however, that there will be fees coming in to the fund as a result of these applications. So it's not a zero-sum game in terms of the source of the funding coming out of the special revenue accounts. All right, anything further on the A36?
And Mr. Chair, just to clarify, so again, the sheet I was given, so actual fund balance in fiscal year 2022 is $15.8 million. And we're showing an estimated fund balance of $3.6 million in 2027. So again, that's my concern. We've heard multiple times that DVS is struggling with that account. And I think this is a good amendment, and I hope you vote in favor.
You're getting me closer. Let's keep talking. All right. All in favor of the A36 amendment, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. No.
No.
The A36 is not adopted. Members, anything further on Senator Coleman?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to offer the A9 amendment.
Senator Coleman offers the A9 amendment. And Senator Coleman, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, this seeks to tighten up some language and provide clearer definitions to the legislature for some definitions that we found were vague and needed a little bit more clarification. Once you receive the amendment, if you look at line 1.7, for example, the commissioner will specify how a court or define how a court has competent jurisdiction. Line 1.10 specifies how the commissioner will determine if a document is similar documentation. 1.13 specifies what constitutes reasonably practical or practicable for purposes of Minnesota statutes. So it seeks to clear up some of the vague definitions and give a little bit more clear direction to this part of the bill.
Buenas tardes, compañeros.
Thank you, Senator
Me llamo
Coleman.
Emilia González Ábalos, directora de Unidos Minnesota, y no puedo ejercer la función de un intérprete. Le pedimos una disculpa porque no tenemos un intérprete disponible por el día de hoy. Sin embargo, puedo hacer un poco de comentario de lo que está pasando en la Cámara ahorita. Esto es la audiencia en es la audiencia en el Comité de Transporte en el Senado. El edificio del Senado está atrás del Capitolio. Si lo ve el Capitolio usted de frente, si viene llegando por el freeway. O si viene llegando por el metro, por el tren ligero, es el edificio que está cruzando la calle de donde está la parada del Capitolio. Ese es el edificio del Senado. Esta audiencia está pasando ahorita en vivo en ese edificio. Y usted está viendo en la pantalla al senador Bobby Joe Champion y a la senadora Zainab Mohammed defendiendo la propuesta de las licencias para todos. A quien usted está viendo en su pantalla en este momento es el demócrata senador Scott Debel. Y él es el jefe o el chair, el director de el Comité de Transporte. Él es el senador del área de sur de Minneapolis, por allá por donde está el Uptown. Él representa esa área. El senador Bobby Joe Champion representa el área del norte de Minneapolis. La senadora Mohammed representa el área del sur de Minneapolis, un poco más al lado del corazón de la comunidad latina, más hacia el sur de la calle Lake. Ella ahora es la senadora del área de donde antes la senadora era la senadora Patricia Torres Rey. Y ahí en la pantalla está la senadora del área de Waconia, una republicana, y está teniendo sus argumentos a favor de ciertas enmiendas. Y usted está escuchando un debate en el piso, en el Comité de Transporte en el Senado, en donde se están, en este proceso, en cada audiencia, en los comités, todos los miembros tienen el derecho de argumentar, debatir o proponer enmiendas. Enmiendas quiere decir que quieren modificar partes de la propuesta o quieren agregar, remover o rediseñar lenguaje en la propuesta que la senadora Mohammed está moviendo en el comité en este momento. Usted ha visto testimonios, está la directora del Centro Legal, Ivina Iver, defendiendo alguna de la falta de información o más bien pensamientos antiinmigrantes, que si esta licencia se puede usar para obtener beneficios, que esta licencia se puede usar para votar, que si esta licencia va a promover el fraude en el estado de Minnesota.
hay muchas alegaciones basadas en sentimientos antiinmigrantes dentro del Senado republicano y el trabajo de los testimonios como este que vemos de Bina Ayer es asegurarse de pelear y defender la propuesta con hechos, con estadísticas, con verdades, porque no es que los senadores sean necesariamente ignorantes o no sepan el tema, es que tienen motivaciones políticas para no pasar esta propuesta, y me refiero a los senadores republicanos. Bina, en este momento, la abogada Ayer está defendiendo, está explicando estoy tratando de escuchar un poquito para decirles qué es lo que está hablando.
Under federal law, a foreign driver who has employment authorization, which is somebody who doesn't
Señor, esta
necessarily have
transmisión
lawful permanent
la estamos
residence
tratando de
can
hacer
get a
accesible a las
CDL.
personas que
So,
no hablan
in
inglés. Si
light
usted
of
habla inglés,
that,
lo invitamos a ver el canal del Capitolio en YouTube o
suggestion that I
asistir a la
believe
audiencia.
addresses what
Nosotros
the
somos
committee
un
was
medio
trying to
accesible
get
para la
at
gente
with this
trabajadora,
amendment
la gente
is
que no,
something that
no tiene
reads,
el
nothing in
privilegio
this
como muchos
section
de
allows
nosotros
the
de ser
commissioner to
bilingües.
issue a commercial
Y
driver's
aparte le
license
pedimos
in
al señor
violation of
que quiere que
conflicting
me calle,
federal law.
que comente en el en el video con respeto. Nosotros estamos haciendo nuestro trabajo y en este momento esta transmisión es para proveer acceso a las personas que no son bilingües. Estoy viendo los comentarios, es el trabajo, claro. Están hablando de la falta de pagar impuestos, están hablando del fraude para el voto, están hablando de
Mr. Chair, if I may consult.
de muchas nociones falsas. Esta es la senadora de Wauconia, que también está movilizando retórica falsa que tiene motivaciones políticas, ¿verdad? A Claudia, yo te digo, no puedo creer que los senadores no saben cómo hacer su tarea. No, sí saben. No hay que ser ingenuos. Ellos saben lo que están diciendo. El propósito de decir estos argumentos es continuar la desinformación con los votantes no inmigrantes, los votantes que no tienen relaciones con ningún inmigrante para su propio beneficio político, para instigar miedo, para instigar división, para instigar sentimiento antiinmigrante. No son ignorantes, son manipulaciones políticas. Ellos tienen toda la información, tienen gente que trabaja para ellos que los prepara. Esto se llama sofistría. Son lo que le llamamos las fake news. Las noticias falsas. Son completamente conscientes de lo que están haciendo y el trabajo de la senadora Mohammed y el senador Bobby Joe Champion es primero no perder la paciencia, segundo refutar las enmiendas antimigrantes y tercero educar al público en general y tratar de educar a los miembros del Senado con argumentos factuales y con ley y con proceso, que lo que dice no tiene un fundamento válido para pasar las enmiendas que pretenden pasar. Vamos a seguir escuchando. Si alguien tiene una pregunta, por favor, mándenos la pregunta. Dice Ale Green RC, ¿cómo el presidente de Estados Unidos va a ayudar a la gente que está en la frontera a llegar con sus familiares aquí y con permiso de trabajo, pero los que tienen muchos años aquí no ayudan? Deberían deberían ayudar primero a la gente que ya está aquí. Creo, bueno, la gente que va llegando a la frontera tienen un proceso que se llama, están pidiendo ser refugiados. Y hay leyes, las leyes internacionales de los refugiados les permiten, y bajo la ley y la Constitución de los Estados Unidos les permiten pedir ese camino para poder encontrar un estatus migratorio. Sin embargo, eso no garantiza que van a tener un estatus. Tienen que comprobar que están escapando de peligro, desestabilización civil o guerra civil, guerra
o
or
situaciones
employment
graves que ponen
authorization.
sus vidas, persecución por raza, por credo, por color de su piel o por género. Entonces, estamos como comparando manzanas con naranjas, no son los mismos casos.
Correct, and the comments
Lo
before
que es
that
necesario es hacer una reforma
disciplinary
migratoria,
Right.
porque la gente viene escapando de violencia y la gente viene escapando de extracción, de pobreza, de saqueo monetario
Mr.
de los
Chair, and
países
thank you for
en
pointing
donde
that out and for
dejan
working with
sus
us on
hogares
it.
para
It was
poder encontrar un
absolutely
futuro mejor. Entonces,
8.7
no es unos o
help
otros,
us
es
to
que
review our
hay
measures.
suficiente y hay abundancia en este país como para que se arregle un proceso de una reforma migratoria y poder seguir recibiendo
Senator
a los
Mohammed.
refugiados y a los asiliados
Yes,
que
thank you, Mr.
escapan de
Chair.
violencia de muchas formas y
Moves
que
to
llegan
reconsider the
a las
8.7
fronteras, a los puertos de entrada.
presenting facts
Em,
the other prevailing side in committee to reconsider.
Esos sí son los 4, como dice Josefina, son la bola de
All in
4. Esos
favor of
4
reconsidering the
son los
8.27,
republicanos
please
que
say
van
aye.
a tener muchas cosas negativas que
no.
decir con tal
All right.
de atrasar el
Senator
proceso, con tal
Coleman
de que
moves
tratar,
8.27 with the
traer
language
excusas,
that
como
council
dice
will
el
now
señor
read.
Josh Hernández. Son absolutamente
For chair
excusas, son
members, the amendment
argumentos,
via online one
pero hay una oportunidad más grande, porque esos dos que están hablando
comma,
mucho, el senador Howe,
or
que es del área del centro de
online
Minnesota, lo que
1.5
es para allá St.
FYI
Cloud,
insert
Suprapex, por
comma
allá,
or employment
y el
authorization.
senador Gasinski, que es de Faribault, de Watona, de por allá,
All right.
viven
Senator Coleman, did you
en
want,
áreas en donde hay una comunidad
roll
inmigrante
call again
creciendo
on
cada
this
vez más.
matter?
Y entonces es súper importante que
All
no
right, all in
olvidemos
favor of the
cómo ven ellos a
8.27
nuestra
as
comunidad y que
amended,
movilicemos a nuestros hijos ciudadanos
say aye.
americanos y a los que se están
Aye.
naturalizando
Opposed, say
a
no.
votarlos fuera de esa silla.
Motion prevails. Thank you.
Em,
Anything further?
no sé si
Like the
ustedes alcanzaron,
A8
bueno, al
amendment?
principio de la
Introduces the
audiencia,
office, the A8 amendment.
El senador Howe dijo
In
que
our packet.
cómo la
Thank you, Mr.
senadora
Chair, and you may
Mohammed puede
recognize this
trabajar
one.
en
This was
hacer
the
una
online
propuesta. Mira,
driver's
ese es
ed
el
bill that I did
Gasinski, ese es el
last year.
Faribault de Watona.
Had pretty good approval.
Muchos de
I
ustedes viven
thought,
por allá.
as
Allá
we've
es una
heard, I think
empacadora de
as my
pavo, ¿no?
districts have heard, that there's a
Muchos
long
trabajadores que
backlog for
mantienen la
driver's
economía
license
de Minnesota
uh,
estable y que a este
classrooms
señor no
and
le
testing.
interesa que la gente
So
pueda
I
llegar
think this would
a
be a
sus
great
trabajos
way
con
to
tranquilidad, a las
expand
escuelas
that,
con
since we're adding
tranquilidad.
new driver's
Es un desdén y una falta
education
de
to our state
em,
with the new
de
undocumented
apertura
safeties.
y yo pudiera
So I
decir
think this would
falta de
provide
visión hacia el
enough
futuro,
more service, so
bloquear
people aren't waiting and waiting to
esta
get in and get their
propuesta
driver's
y decir,
testing
pretender que
done
él decía, en
and
el pasado yo la
training for
quería
that.
apoyar,
So
pero la realidad es que no
I
la
hope
apoyó.
we could
Hicieron
approve the
enmiendas, se trató
A8 amendment.
todo en el pasado y él siguió
The
votando que
A8
no y
amendment.
también siguió
Senator Champion.
negando una audiencia
Thank you, Mr.
a esta propuesta
Chair.
cuando los republicanos estaban en el poder.
Mr. Chair,
Pero le decía
what I
que
believe
al
is happening
principio
here
estaban
is
pidiendo los
asking those
republicanos
individuals who
que
are
cómo
seeking
podían
this driver's license
ofrecer
to
los
go through
autores
additional
una propuesta de
pieces.
ley
You don't necessarily have to go through
más moderada
if you're a citizen.
para,
Now, I might be wrong about that, so
para poder
perhaps we
preservar
could-
la
can we
propuesta en
ask,
caso que los republicanos
Department of
volvieran a
Public Works
recuperar
to
el
let us
poder.
know if this A8 amendment
En caso de que los
provides any
republicanos sacaran en
additional
la próxima elección al
support
gobernador
our
y
approval
ganaran la mayoría en el
by
Senado y ganaran la mayoría
provisional law.
en la Casa de
Deputy
Representantes.
Commissioner Zhang is
Y eso
coming
para
to
mí es una alerta de que si hay algún momento en los que en el que el Partido Republicano gane una mayoría,
Did you
esta va a ser
understand the
una de las propuestas que si es aprobada y firmada por el gobernador, esta va a ser una de las propuestas que van a querer eliminar. Entonces, acordémonos que estas ganancias no son permanentes, cuestan mucho trabajo y después de ganarlas se tienen que proteger. Escuchemos un momento y regreso a ponernos al corriente en unos 10, 15 minutos. Muchas gracias por seguirnos. Por favor, compartan.
the answer to your
Y por
question,
favor, a
Senator
las
Champion.
personas que
Yes,
no les
Mr.
interesa
Chair.
escuchar en
That's what
español,
I
los
thought, but I
invitamos
wanted
a
to be
seguir el
clear
canal
because I'm
del
not an
Capitolio.
expert in
Ahí está
driver
todo en inglés,
vehicle
interrupciones.
services. But it's for that
Nosotros
reason
somos
because we're asking them
responsables
to
y
have to do
somos
something that we're not
nuestros
requiring
jefes,
others.
es la
We are
audiencia
asking the
de estatus
committee
mixto, la
members
audiencia
to
indocumentada, la audiencia
amendment.
trabajadora de
And
las
also,
familias trabajadoras
anyone who
y
applies
trabajadores
for
esenciales
a driver's license
que
non-compliant,
se
whatever
parten
the
la espalda
title is,
y no
they should
tienen
have to go
necesariamente
through
el tiempo de
a
aprender inglés.
understanding
Nosotros estamos de su
safety
lado
test,
y
hit the
estamos
road
creando
test,
propuesta para un puente, para que usted pueda tener la información necesaria para
para saber cómo va avanzando las licencias para todos. Regresamos en algunos
I've heard
minutos.
murder
Muchas gracias.
stories of some people being required to take the exam 2 or 3 times when you think in terms of the driving test. So, Mr. Chair, I'm asking the committee not to adopt the A8 amendment.
My husband, when he moved to Minnesota, studied really, really hard. He did not want to fail that test. He passed on the first try, but he had to take that test. Senator Jasinski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just informed by staff. I think if we delete, I'll make an oral amendment to delete sections 1 and 3. I think that would address the concerns, but I take one brief moment if you can let me confirm.
Is there a section 2? Oh, I see. Oh, I see.
That's referring to a section. Okay.
All right. So members, to clarify, there's not really sections per se. So effectively what Senator Jasinski is offering as an oral amendment would be to delete everything up to 4.2. So everything that precedes 4.3. So the amendment would start on line 4.3, page 4. So all that would remain under, if the Jasinski oral amendment prevails, would be 4.3 on.
It's an online program, that's a little different.
So,
Mr. Chair.
Senator Jasinski.
And I apologize. So I want to get this right. So we're confirming. So I know there's a couple of other amendments. So can I withdraw the amendment for now and we'll come back to it?
Yes, Senator Jasinski withdraws the A8 and anything further, members? Is there other amendments? Senator Howe.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'd like to offer the A26 amendment. And what the A26 amendment does is on certain non-compliant licenses, it shifts it from a horizontal view to a vertical view.
So the A26 members is in your packet. Similar to the adolescent driver's license, creates a vertical orientation to the driver's license versus portrait versus landscape. Senator Howe.
No, I think it's, I know it's going to look different, but I think there should be some way to differentiate between the two, and that's why the reason for the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Senator Champion.
Mr. Chair, we are asking the committee not to adopt the A26 amendment. We've been talking a lot about today how we want the license to be consistent and for there to be nothing that raises specter as to why someone has a vertical license versus something else. So I understand the senator's thoughts, but we are asking for this committee to not adopt the A26 amendment.
All right. Thank
Mr.
you.
Chair.
Senator Howe.
Thank you, Chair Dibble. Can I ask the question to our immigration folks here?
Sure.
Is this driver's license going to prevent, does this help prevent deportation?
Desire.
Does this driver's license do something to prevent deportation?
Senator Dibble, Senator Howe, can I ask for clarification of your question? When you say this driver's license, do you
Well,
just mean a driver's license generally, or are you talking about specifically the vertical layout that you're proposing?
Senator Howe.
Senator Dibble and Chair Dibble, and is it any driver's license. Does a non-compliant driver's license do anything, the driver's license proposed in the bill, does that do anything and to provide any protection from deportation? I mean, is that what? I mean, I can understand if they do something wrong, they can be deported. But does this provide, this driver's license provide protection from deportation?
Ms. Iyer.
Senator Dibble, Senator Howe, I provide a two-part answer. No, generally, but in part. So no, in that just having a driver's license is not bestowing any type of immigration status or protection that would allow somebody to be protected from deportation. The second part of this is that having a driver's license in Minnesota allows an individual to now be protected against one of the most common ways for somebody to get caught up in the system and then be put into deportation proceedings, which is driving without a license. So now that someone obtains a license, it is less we predict that it will be less likely that they might get picked up and then sent to ICE and then deported and separated from their family, from their employers who need them.
Mr. Chair.
Senator Howe.
But in order to get picked up, don't you normally have to do a violation? In my experience, and I've got a vast, if you reach back far enough in my past, there's a reason my military career started, and it wasn't because I volunteered willingly. I kind of had an option, and that's the way I went. So I guess if you do a violation, whether you have a driver's license or not, that's not, I mean, does it, how does that work? When you get the violation and the officer has you, he runs your information, it doesn't make any difference?
Ms. Iyer.
Senator Dibble, Senator Howe, to the extent I understand, I think I understand the question. The issue is that when somebody is picked up for driving without a license, whether it's one time, perhaps a couple of times, and they are then placed if, for example, in certain instances where they're placed into custody, ICE is looking at those roles, seeing who's in custody, and then that results in the person being picked up by ICE and then being put into deportation proceedings. So that's the way in which providing this license would reduce, I think, the number of longtime Minnesotans who are otherwise law-abiding, who are members of their community, who have families here, to not be exposed to deportation and family separation, and to be able to continue to live in their communities, including your own.
Senator Champion.
Mr. Chair, and I would add on one additional notion. What this bill will do will also prohibit individuals from profiling individuals. We don't want individuals to profile someone and look at someone and say, I'm going to stop them. And with all due respect, that's what happens if someone is not careful. The profiling happens, and then you get drug into a system, and then reporting, because then we start doing the federal government's work, and we're not trying to do that. The federal government has the ability to do their own work. We want to make sure our streets are safe, individuals are safe, and families are able to stay intact and go through whatever processes that they need to go through. So I would say there's everything that the other testifier has articulated, but I would also take one additional step to alleviate profiling.
Thank you. Senator Howe. Anyone else? All right, so Senator Howe renews his motion on the A26. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. No. Motion does not prevail. The A26 is not adopted. All right, members.
Mr. Chair?
Someone's going to order dinner soon? All right, Senator Lang.
I had a big lunch. I have the A22 for you.
Senator Lang offers the A22. Oh yeah, maybe breakfast. So Senator Lang, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And this goes along the same routes of Senator Howe's amendment. And this is just simply stating that the license has to look different. It has to look different because it is different. Not in privileges, not in status by any means, but just like my, 17-year-old son has a different driver's license than what I do. Just like ID only is a different color. That's largely what this amendment does. It identifies people who are driving legally within the state, but are not allowed by law to vote, not allowed by law to do several other things. And it simply states that this is different. It's not a discriminatory thing by any means. In fact, just like it's not discriminatory to call somebody under the age of 18 or under the age of 21. They have certain rights and certain availabilities that they can do and some that they can't, and that's what this does.
Right. To the A22, Senator Champion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Senator, for the A22 amendment. For all the reasons that we've already talked about, probably exhaustively, that we are asking this committee not to adopt the A22. All the things that Senator Lang has talked about his son and the others being younger, and that looks different. There's a difference between age and one's immigration status. We're trying to get away from differences because of one's immigration status. And so that's the whole crux of this bill. And so it's for that reason that we are asking the committee to not adopt the A22 amendment.
All right. Anything further? All right. We've discussed this subject in many different ways. All in favor of the A22 amendment, please say aye. All opposed say no. No.
No.
The motion does not prevail. The A22 is not adopted. Members, discussion, questions, amendments. Senator Jasinski. Senator, where are you pointing? Senator Howe.
I have one more.
All right, Senator Howe.
I'd like to offer the A39. And basically what the A39 amendment, it must be asked to demonstrate the citizenship and lawful presence. And if they don't, they get a non-compliant driver's license that is marked conditional.
Senator Howe offers the A39 amendments. Offered and described.
And this, Mr. Chair?
Senator Howe.
Thank you, Chair Dibble. This treats everyone the same. So if someone comes in and does not provide citizenship or lawful status, they get a conditional. So it doesn't mean that it would be any different for someone else that came in. You would get a conditional driver's license.
All right. Senator Champion.
Mr. Chair, thank you for the offering of the A39 amendment. It's for all the reasons that we have already exhaustively talked about why the A39 amendment should not be adopted. One, it creates a difference. Two, it's asking for immigration status. Three, it's requiring that there be a marking on the driver's license that says conditional. It is for those reasons that we're asked that you not adopt the A39 amendment.
Senator Howe.
Chair Dibble, could I ask staff to maybe make I think this was drafted maybe not in light of what we really wanted. We would rather have it say proof of residency, not proof of citizenship. So is there an easy way to change that?
I think
nothing's easy, but I see the competent person is working on it.
I think your capable staff was already preempted that inquiry, and council is working on
So
an alternative.
the amendment would basically say we wouldn't be asking for citizenship. We would just basically be asking for proof of residency, the same as needed in enhanced driver's license to get in. So it would treat everyone the same. If you've got no, the standard proof of residency, you would get a conditional driver's license.
Senator Champion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for all the reasons I've already articulated. We think this would add additional confusion, even if it says enhanced driver's license, because then there would be additional benefits that were not really contemplated in this particular bill. And so we want to just make sure, again, that individuals are able to drive and that they're able to drive their family to and from the place and spaces that they need to without going through these notions of whether they have residency here in our great country. So we're asking this, asking you to not adopt the A39 amendment.
We're going to pause for a moment. I think we're working out the particularities on how Senator Howe wanted the amendment to appear. Senator Jasinski, is your online driver's ed amendment ready to go?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Staff has got that ready, but she's busy working right now as well on this one. So when she's done with this one, we are ready with the A8 with the clarified language. And I can comment about it. So, and my apologies in drafting it, it was my mistake. So all we want to do is we know there's going to be an inflow of new drivers, and we're already overburdened with training some of these drivers and education. So it will just allow an option for people to take online driver's license training or in-person training. Doesn't make any more requirement for the non-documented citizens to do anything extra. It just allows the provision for anybody wanting to take education can do it online. And Ms. Stengel, I think, has the oral amendment to make that correct for me.
So we're going to go,
Mr. Chair.
all right, so we're going to go back to the A39. We got a little preview of the online driver's ed. So we'll go back to the A39.
In that, Mr. Chair, I thank you. Instead of holding things up and trying to do this on the fly, we will, and because I sit on the judiciary, you'll see it in judiciary. You can be prepared for it there.
Senator Howe withdraws the A39. Senator Jasinski reoffers the A8 with some changes.
And with that, I ask Ms. Stengel to report that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Senator Jasinski and members. We're going to be kind of winging it here in order to not wait for a new amendment to be drafted. So essentially, we will be taking the amendment is to delete everything out of the A8 except for lines 5.8 through lines 6.8. And for the instruction, the section 12 starting on 5.8 will be inserted into the bill on page 9 after line 4. So essentially it's just taking section 12 on 5.8 and then the repealer on 6.5 and deleting the rest.
So it's members basically authorizing an online driver education program. Anything further, members? I will suggest that online driver's education may have merit, maybe not. We need a thorough conversation about online driver's education as a matter of policy, and that this may not be the bill in the time to have that conversation, but I appreciate you're starting the conversation, Senator Jasinski.
So, Mr. Chair.
Senator Champion.
Like you, we do think it's an important discussion, and it's my understanding that the other body has been talking about it, but nothing has been agreed upon, and it hasn't been vetted in a way in order to make sure that the intent of the authors and all those involved will be realized. But what I will say is Senator Mohammed will continue to be open to that conversation and will continue to, and when I say Senator Mohammed, I mean we, because we are partners, right? We will continue to talk about it and vet it and see if it makes sense. But for tonight's purposes, we're asking you all not to adopt the A8 amendment.
Thank you. Anything further, Senator Jasinski?
Mr. Chair, before I make my closing comments, does any of the members from my caucus would like to make some closing comments on, oh, I'm sorry, we're still on the A8, I'm sorry.
So,
A hint that the end is near, so I'm
all
sorry.
right. Actually late to a dinner engagement.
I would still
so
like to offer the
someone is in
A8.
Car waiting for me out on the street. So the A8, all in favor of the A8, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. No.
No.
The motion does not prevail. The A8 is not adopted. Members, discussion, questions, amendments. Senator Howe.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And, you know, I've drafted these bills in the past in my decade here and never seemed to be able to get the support to get it off the finish line. And I do believe we need to do something. My concerns with the current bill is I'm afraid that we have opened the door and we have no protections and have basically opened ourselves up to another 9/11, and that's my concerns. And that's why I think there needs to be something in there that requires a process of notification and clarification, so we don't have those folks that are on the terrorist watch list coming in. And that's my concern. And I don't think there's a verification process and I don't think that, I think that's missing in this bill. And that's where my major concern comes from. Other folks will have other concerns, but that's my major concern is the reason that this was put in place back in 2003 was because of what happened at 9/11. And it seems like in 20 years here, we have forgotten what happened to us that day. And that's my concern. I do believe that that folks should have the opportunity to drive legally. And I would hope that we can get there. This, to me, gives us a big hole in that security piece that I think we need to fix. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Howe. Senator Lang.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I just, before we get going here, a big thank you to you and for a lot of leeway today. Senator Champion, Senator Mohammed as well. You know, at the beginning of the onset to this, I talked about making mistakes when I was a young man, and you've had a very smart man sitting right next to you, guiding you along the way. But I don't think you made some mistakes today. I think this bill has a lot of mistakes in it. You have 4 Republican senators sitting here that are probably some of the least dagger-throwing Republicans you're going to see. We truly are. You have a concept that we agree with, and you have a bill that provides a pathway for illegal voting. It provides a pathway with no safeguards for maybe getting a clean drive, you know. And these are the things I look at when I look at a bill. How, if this was my bill, who would come to me and say, well, you can't do that because there's going to be someone going right down that road. You know, things pop in my head like an 18-year-old kid that wants to be able to drink beer. What would it take for that kid? You know, not that when I was 18 I wanted to. But the fact remains, there's a lot of holes here. And like I said, you have a smart man sitting next to you, you have a smart man as chair that see those holes as well. I think there's a pathway to make this bill much better. And it has everything to do with what Senator Howe was saying when it comes to sharing of information. The license may end up looking exactly the same. And there's probably nothing I can do to make it look green, blue, whatever other color it possibly can be. But the things that are really concerning in this bill are the information sharing, what that means to the state of Minnesota, what it means to election integrity. That's kind of all I had to say, Mr. Chair. Thanks for leaving. And we got to go get some dinner sometimes.
Thank you, Senator Lang. Members, Senator Coleman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will add to Senator Lang, once you've been in labor for 24 hours and you're unable to eat, you can go a while after that. So, you know, we could go longer, but I appreciate the thoughtful discussion surrounding this bill. As Senators Howe and Lang referenced, it's not in a form that I can vote in right now. We sent a lot down the pipeline to judiciary, and I want to see how those conversations go, because the concept of this, the heart and soul of this, it is the right thing to do. It is a great
Bueno,
idea.
regresamos. Soy Emilia González Ábalos, directora de Unidos Minnesota, y estamos escuchando a la senadora Julia Coleman de Waconia, asegurando que ya llevan muchas horas y que eventualmente todos tenemos o todos ellos se quieren ir a cenar y descansar durante el día. El senador de Waconia,
Thank you, Mr.
el
Chair.
senador de Waconia,
And thank
el
you so
senador
much
anterior, el senador Lang.
for committee. I am just delighted to be supporting the bill. As it stands now, I think
Estamos escuchando en este momento y esto es importante, por eso me paré a escuchar. La senadora Jennifer McEwen, la senadora demócrata de Duluth, está argumentando muy poderosamente que ella está entusiasta de votar por esta propuesta, como le está presentando tal cual la senadora Mohammed y el senador Bobby Joe Champion, y que esta propuesta tiene casi 20 años en que se ha escuchado con tantos argumentos y que ves audiencia tras audiencia, proceso tras proceso, aquellos que dicen que lo quieren apoyar dicen una cosa pero hacen lo contrario, y que ella ya está lista para mover esta provisión.
Appearance of it or word changes on it. I would be interested in learning, and I can talk to you about this offline as well, but I worry about a chilling effect. It seems to me the whole point of the bill is to bring people out of the shadows and get them their license so that our roads can be safer, so that people can get insurance, and that's all part of the safety piece. And honestly, as somebody who represents a constituency that does not live in the metro, this bill will really help people who live in more rural areas.
Esta senadora, la senadora McEwen, está invitando a aquellos senadores que están hablando en contra de esta propuesta o que están haciendo larga, prometiendo cosas que en el pasado no cumplieron, aunque se enmendaron. Todas estas provisiones se han incorporado en alguna vez en la historia de la propuesta. Y aún así, esos mismos senadores votaron en contra de la propuesta. O sea, esto es una cosa sumamente de integridad. Ellos dicen una cosa, pero han hecho lo contrario, estos senadores republicanos. Entonces, la senadora McEwen está hablando de lo importante que es para los residentes o no los residentes permanentes por estatus, pero la gente que vive en las áreas rurales y especialmente en los distritos de la senadora que representa el área de Waconia, el senador que representa el área de Faribault y el otro senador que representa el área de Central Minnesota. Lo importante que es para que los residentes de esas áreas puedan salir a la luz y puedan ser parte de la integración de las áreas económicas para esos sectores que ellos dicen que tanto les importa. Estamos escuchando la respuesta del senador Gasinski.
The driver's license is a gateway document for lots of things that happen here in the state. And I think businesses and expect government to verify a lot of this information. I don't think some of this
El senador Gasinski está regresando a sus argumentos viejos. Ellos dicen que la licencia, esta propuesta de la licencia de conducir para todos es un vehículo para que la gente que no debería votar vote, para que la gente que no debería tener beneficios sociales lo reciban, y él está preocupado falsamente. O sea, vamos a regresar a lo que estaban argumentando. ¿Cómo puede ser que no estén educados? No, sí lo saben de lo que están hablando, saben cómo funciona el sistema, son senadores, y en especial el senador Gasinski tiene muchos años siendo senador. Ellos saben exactamente cómo funciona, pero están escogiendo politizar el tema para movilizar a sus votantes antiinmigrantes, porque ellas son las personas que los mantienen en la oficina, elección tras elección. Este no es un tema partidista, realmente es un tema que los republicanos antiinmigrantes han hecho partidista porque les benefician las urnas. Y entonces ahorita el senador Gasinski está hablando falsamente de cómo esta propuesta puede abrir el camino para la gente que no es elegible para votar, vote, pero esto es una falsedad, porque la única gente que puede ser elegible para votar se tiene que registrar. tiene que ser ciudadano americano y todos nosotros sabemos que si tú te registras como votante y votas y no eres elegible, te estás dando un balazo en el pie, te estás poniendo tú mismo en una situación, en un problema muy severo en donde puedes perder tu estatus migratorio para siempre. Esto es una inadmisibilidad muy severa en la Corte de Migración y es incluso fraude electoral y es considerado una felonía en el estado de Minnesota. Entonces, esto que argumentan no tienen las bases para decir que hay fraude electoral, no tienen las bases para argumentar que lo que ellos dicen es lo que pasa. Es politiquería antiinmigrante, es politiquería falsa, son fake news, noticias falsas, usadas con el único objetivo de engañar a la gente, de instigar el miedo y la división. Y lo que estamos escuchando es el senador Gasinski repitiendo todas las cosas falsas que ha dicho durante casi 4 horas. Más bien durante 4 horas, porque esta audiencia empezó a las 3 de la tarde. Escuchamos ahora a la senadora demócrata Kelly Morrison del área de Deep Haven, que también habla en apoyo, es un importante tema para ella y ella está buscando que esto se ponga ya a la votación en el Comité de Transporte porque él quiere votar a favor. Tenemos aquí al senador Jim Carlson, un aliado súper accesible, súper amable, que también tiene mucho tiempo en el Senado y él es un senador demócrata del área de Eagan.
Amendments offered, but they didn't satisfy my concerns enough to be able to
Él está hablando que todas las enmiendas que introdujo el Partido Demócrata, el Partido Republicano no satisfacen ninguna de sus preocupaciones. Está hablando de las páginas tras páginas de enmiendas que él no considera que sean realmente alguna amenaza para la seguridad o para el bienestar de los minnesotanos.
that they've missed anything. So I think
Él
that
está
I
hablando de
feel
que la
very good
propuesta de
supporting
las
it.
licencias para todos, tal como la presenta la senadora Mohammed y el senador Debo, no pierde nada. No tiene ninguna necesidad más. Es una propuesta completa, tiene seguridad de información, tiene muchas provisiones importantes. Él está hablando de las contribuciones de los inmigrantes y está hablando de cómo esta propuesta puede proveer un incremento económico porque la gente va a tener sustentabilidad para manejar, ir a sus trabajos, participar más activamente en la economía, tener sus carritos.
So that's important to me, and I'm very pleased, Senator, for you bringing this to.
Y está muy agradecido con la senadora Mohammed de haber traído esta propuesta al Comité de Transporte.
Wasn't planning to speak, but because I want to just hurry up and vote it, but since I'm the only remaining person not speaking.
Escuchamos al senador Hong del área de San Pablo, también un senador que tiene tiempo en el Senado.
You know, it's not a reaction bill. It was reaction that we're trying to out of fear in 2003 that we punish certain communities.
El senador es un aliado súper importante. Él está hablando de cómo antes del 2003 era accesible para las personas sin importar su estatus migratorio tener una licencia para conducir en el estado de Minnesota, una licencia estándar, ¿verdad? Y cómo esta guerra contra el terror y este sentimiento de miedo hizo a la administración tomar una oportunidad para reaccionar y cerrar las puertas y que tiene la oportunidad en este momento de reparar las condiciones a una comunidad que contribuye económicamente. Y en lugar de irse a otro estado a pagar y buscar esta oportunidad en otro lugar, que lo hagan aquí en el estado de Minnesota. El senador Hall dice que esta propuesta es buenísima, que es excelente y que le agradece a la senadora Mohammed haber traído esta propuesta al Comité de Transporte.
We came so far from terrorism. Now we came to encounter COVID-19. And I think
El senador Hall
many
está
issues
hablando
already dealt with.
de todo lo que
federal
hemos pasado por los últimos 20 años, incluyendo la pandemia del COVID-19 y cómo estos trabajadores
And again,
han batallado para tener acceso a sus trabajos y tener acceso a una buena vida, a pesar de que su trabajo esencial nos ha mantenido sobre ruedas en el estado de Minnesota. Un aliado súper importante. Si usted vive en San Pablo, lo invitamos a asistir al Capitolio y darle las gracias al senador Hall, al senador Scott Debo, a la senadora McEwen, al senador Carlson. ¿Cuántos me van? 4, me faltan 2, a la senadora Port. Y me falta uno más, y a la senadora Kelly, me parece que es la senadora del área de Deep Haven. Son senadores que tienen la mayoría demócratas, son 6 demócratas, 4 republicanos. Los 4 republicanos no tienen el poder de bloquear esta propuesta de ley, los senadores demócratas, y el Chair Debo, jefe del Comité de Transportación, ha escuchado pacientemente todas las enmiendas. Mi compañera Sara, que está ahí, es nuestra directora política. Nuestra directora de políticas públicas está ella mismo en la Cámara del Comité de Transportación en el Senado y me mandó un documento en donde estoy leyendo 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, unas 13, 14 enmiendas que estos 4 senadores republicanos, 15, 16, 17, parece que son 17, creo que son como 17 enmiendas. Este partido republicano, estos 4 senadores y de los cuales 3 tienen una comunidad de inmigrantes súper importante para la fábrica económica, están tratando de hacer la larga y de bloquear, pero 4 senadores antiinmigrantes no son suficientes para bloquear esta propuesta y los senadores demócratas están entusiasmados para para traerla al Comité de Transporte para un voto final y esperemos aprobarlo. Van a escuchar de la autora principal y después van a ejecutar el voto final.
Giving 2 days of hearings and thorough and healthy debate for this bill. And I just want to take a moment and thank Senator Bobby Joe Champion for not only working with me on this bill, but literally mentoring me and supporting me.
La senadora Mohammed está dando las últimas palabras antes de votar formalmente en el Comité de Transporte por esta propuesta y le está agradeciendo al jefe del Comité de Transporte, al senador Debo, a todos los senadores y en especial al senador Bobby Joe Champion por haber sido un apoyo y un maestro. Pues recuerden que este es el primer año que la senadora Mohammed carga esta propuesta de ley. En los años anteriores, Bobby Joe Champion fue uno de los autores que llevó esta propuesta en el Senado y ella está agradeciendo el tiempo de haber escuchado y de haber considerado esta propuesta.
Can I ask if we can amend that motion to also?
El senador Gasinski quiere otra vez meter una enmienda.
Traditionally, when there's rulemaking in a bill, we goes to state and local gov, and there's several examples of rulemaking in this bill.
Aquí el senador Gasinski está proponiendo mover aparte esta propuesta al comité de gobierno local porque dice que hay muchas adjudicaciones que cambian las reglas para los gobiernos locales y espera que ese comité que también esta propuesta visite ese comité, lo cual quiere extender pues el proceso, no atrasarlo.
Mr. Chair, I'll amend my motion to recommend it pass and go to state gov.
Y está enmendando su enmienda para que en lugar de ir al gobierno local vaya a gobierno estatal porque el senador Debo le dice, pero es que esto no es una cosa de regulación local, es una cosa de regulación estatal, por eso es que enmendó su enmienda.
On the motion to refer to recommend to pass and refer to state and local governments.
¿Van a votar en esta enmienda?
Please take the roll.
Por favor, tomen un voto.
Chair Dibble?
No.
Vice Chair Morrison?
No.
Senator Jasinski?
Senador Dibble, no. Senadora Morrison, no. Senador Gasinski,
Senator Coleman?
sí. Senador Carlson, no.
Senator Herr?
No.
Senador Herr, no.
Senator Howe?
Aye.
Senador
Senator Lang?
Howe, sí.
Senator McEwen?
No.
Senador McEwen, no.
Senator Port?
No.
tenemos 6 y 4, ¿verdad? Sabemos más o menos cómo va a salir esa votación.
On a vote of 4 yeses and 6 nos, that
4
motion did
sís,
not prevail.
6 no.
That
La
motion
moción no prevalece.
not
El
prevail.
bill, la propuesta de ley
Senator
no
Howe?
parará
I move
en el
that,
Comité
we
de
send
Gobierno
this bill
Estatal.
to, elections for all the discussion we've had.
Ahora el senador Howe quiere traer otra vez otra enmienda, ahora para que
I
esto
definitely
pase al
believe
Comité
that
de
this
Elecciones, aunque no es un bill electoral.
to elections, and so that would be my motion, Mr. Chair.
Se va a volver a votar esta moción.
Okay, Senator Howe moves that Senate File 27 as amended be recommended to pass and be referred to elections. Clerk will take the roll.
Se van a tomar los
Chair
votos.
Dibble,
No.
Vice Chair Morrison,
No.
Senator Jasinski,
Aye.
Senator Carlson,
No.
Senator Coleman, Senator Herr,
No.
Senator Howe,
Aye.
Senator Lang, Senator McEwen,
No.
Senator Port,
No.
All right. With 4 votes in favor of the Howe motion and 6 opposed, the motion does
Otra
not
vez 4-6, la moción no prevalece.
get motion.
No prevalece
I do, Mr.
que
Chair.
se mueva
I
esta
move
propuesta por el
that,
Comité de Votaciones o Comité Electoral.
Senate file, the number 27, thank you, as amended, be passed and referred to the Judiciary Committee.
La
Easy
senadora
to
McEwen
remember
está llamando al
because
voto para
Senator
que
Port and I were born on August 27th.
para que, la propuesta de ley, licencias para todos, que es
Chair
el
Dibble,
archivo del Senado número 27,
Vice Chair Morrison,
sea votado así
Senator
como se ha
Jasinski,
enmendado las enmiendas
Carlson,
adoptadas solamente, y se está llamando
Senator
al voto.
Coleman, Senator Herr,
Yes.
Senator Howe,
Nay.
Senator Lang,
No.
Senator McEwen,
Yes.
Senator Port,
Yes.
With 6 voting in favor and 4 voting opposed, the Senate file is recommended to pass and will be reported to the Judiciary Committee. So, let me tap the gavel. And thank you all. I just wanted to make a quick announcement. On Monday, we're going to have a presentation from our esteemed council and fiscal staff.
La propuesta de licencias para todos ha sido aprobada por el Comité de Transporte con un voto de 4 en contra y 6 a favor. Ustedes ya saben quiénes son los que estaban en contra. Para toda la gente que nos ve en el área de Faribault, su senador está votando contra sus intereses, el senador Jasinski, y para los residentes, para la gente que vive en el área de Central Minnesota, ya para St. Cloud, Sauk Rapids, toda esa área de fe y justicia. Su senador acaba también de votar en contra de una propuesta que es importante para usted. Entonces queremos platicar con usted para ver cómo los vamos a hacer responsables en las próximas elecciones. Los 6 votos al sí fue el senador que está viendo usted, es el presidente del Comité de Transporte, el senador Dibble, la senadora McEwen, la senadora Port, el senador Howe, la senadora, el senador Carlson, y me falta una, la senadora Morrison, me parece. La senadora, déjele investigo si es la senadora Morrison, que tampoco tengo así que diga mucha memoria pictográfica. Me parece que sí es la senadora Morrison del distrito 45. Bueno, acabó la audiencia por el día de hoy. Mañana a las 8:30 de la mañana vamos a tratar de transmitir en vivo de nuevo para que nos vea. Estamos trabajando en conseguir un intérprete para que pueda interpretar la audiencia. Si no, pues les voy a venir a hacer el quite, discúlpeme. Si usted quiere escuchar la audiencia en inglés, le hacemos la invitación a que vea la audiencia en el canal del Capitolio. Ella está en inglés, no hay interpretación. Nosotros estamos haciendo nuestro trabajo para tener accesibilidad para nuestras comunidades que hablan español. Y pues le invitamos a que nos siga. Estoy tratando de ver si nuestra compañera Sara se puede conectar allá en el piso, en el piso del Senado, en el piso de la audiencia del Senado. Tenemos también, muchas gracias a Mauri por recordarnos, tenemos una junta, no sé si Irving nos pueda jalar el flyer. Hay una junta comunitaria el 24 de diciembre, el 24 de enero del 2023, el martes, allá en San Pablo. Es una junta para información, para que crezca usted su liderazgo, sea parte de la historia de esta propuesta. No importa si hay gente que tiene 20 años o 5 años o 3 meses o 3 minutos de haberse involucrado, es importante su presencia porque necesitamos a todos, necesitamos una comunidad llena de líderes como usted, que son expertos en la realidad en la que vive y que sus hijos, su familia cuentan con usted y con su audacia para entrar a la arena pública para poder cambiar las condiciones que merecemos, tener las condiciones que merecemos como seres humanos con dignidad completa. Si me puede regresar el flyer, es el 24 de enero del 2023 en las escuelas públicas de San Pablo, en el salón A y B, en el 360 de la Colburn Street en San Pablo. Lo esperamos. Esto es una asociación con las escuelas públicas de San Pablo. Le invitamos a que pueda asistir a esta junta. Esperamos, no sé si el senador de esa área nos quiere acompañar, ¿por qué no? A lo mejor los representantes de esa área nos quieran acompañar, pero lo más importante es que usted se acerque y sea parte del proceso. Porque una vez que ganemos licencias, tenemos una agenda. ¿Qué más sigue? Necesitamos recuperar nuestro acceso al seguro médico. ¿Usted sabía que también otra cosa que nos quitó el gobernador Pawlenty en el 2003 fue el acceso al seguro médico estatal? Así es, antes del 2003, la gente, sin importar su estatus migratorio, que calificaba para lo que ahora es Minnesota Care, podía tener acceso a ese seguro médico. Y entonces, en lugar de tener salud solamente en casos de emergencia, teníamos salud comprensiva, salud preventiva. Podíamos irnos a checar los dientes, tener las visitas al oculista. Y sabemos que hay índices de falta de seguro médico en nuestra comunidad precisamente porque nos quitaron el acceso con este argumento antiinmigrante. Entonces, hay que recuperar ese acceso también porque nuestros trabajadores se lo merecen. Hay también mucho trabajo para tener acceso a entrenamientos en los trabajos de construcción verde y energía que son mucho mejor pagados que la construcción residencial y la construcción que no tiene sindicato. Estamos trabajando en eso. Estamos trabajando también en establecer tiempo pagado para que la gente pueda tener tiempo de enfermedad con su familia o que las mujeres embarazadas que van a tener a sus bebés puedan tener más tiempo pagado para recuperarse de sus cuerpos después de un parto. Estamos trabajando en el lonche universal, en la guardería universal también. Entonces hay mucho trabajo que tenemos que hacer. Pero lo más importante es pasar este bill y después seguir involucrados. Es un momento muy emocionante porque tenemos una mayoría proinmigrante que no fue ofrecido. O sea, este camino para tener las licencias no ha sido un regalo, no es porque la gente es buena. Lo ganamos porque hubo mucha gente movilizando electoralmente. Me voy a quitar los lentes para que no me brille. Mucha gente estuvo organizando electoralmente, muchas personas que ni siquiera pueden votar porque no son ciudadanos. Nosotros hemos visto a mucha gente que ha votado pro migrante para tener las condiciones y que esto sea posible. Entonces le damos las gracias a todas las personas que se han involucrado, le damos las gracias a las personas que nos están escuchando y le invitamos a que se junte. Júntese a la lucha. Tiene su hogar político con Unidos Minnesota. Le damos la bienvenida cuando usted guste. Pero si tiene usted un sindicato, se identifica mejor en otra organización, está muy bien también. La cosa es que se junte, porque los derechos nunca han sido regalados. Los derechos nunca han sido otorgados. Los derechos han sido ganados a través de organización comunitaria, de movilización masiva, de representación grande, de participación. Y lo invitamos a que participe porque usted vale la pena que nosotros trabajemos en mejorar nuestros derechos y nuestra calidad de vida. Los esperamos el 24 de enero con nuestra organizadora Regina. Y bueno, muy buenas noches, que descanse, gracias por seguirnos. Dele like a Unidos Minnesota, dele share, dele comparte y dele me gusta. Síganos por nuestras redes sociales y los esperamos mañana a las 8:30 de la mañana en vivo. La propuesta de la licencia sigue avanzando en el Senado y mañana la audiencia es en la Casa de Representantes. Acuérdense que son 2 cámaras diferentes. Nos vemos, que descanse. Es un buen día. Te la llevaron bien larga, pero pues como dicen en mi pueblo, hay veces que la gente actúa como rata en quemazón, no hayan ni para dónde. Una batalla a la vez. Y esto no se hace hasta que el gobernador no lo firme. Compártale a su vecina que si ya se aprobó licencias, no. Se están moviendo de buen camino. Las licencias no se hacen ley hasta que el gobernador lo firma. Y todavía cuando el gobernador lo firma, ahí mismo va a decir, se implementa en tal fecha. Y se está viendo que la fecha de implementación, si se aprueba, va a ser en octubre. Muchas gracias, que descanse y nos vemos la próxima porque aquí ya me está hablando a mi hijo que quiere que le rasque. Buenas noches.